across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, a very good afternoon. This is Talk Drive. Thank you so much for your company. I'm Peter Cardwell, here with you right through until 7 o'clock. The grooming gang survivors demanding Jess Phillips resign. She is the minister who campaigned so much in opposition. Why is it that at the Home Office there is so little she seems to be able to do to help victims of rape gangs? This is just an absolute scandal. This inquiry is continuing to fall apart. Julia spoke to Jim Gamble earlier, a former senior police officer who was seen as someone who could chair this inquiry. He's dropped out, many other people as well, including 4 survivors. Also, this scandal of the one in, one out migrant and France backing away from a pledge to crack down on small boats. There's a horrible, horrible story as well about a Sudanese migrant who attacked 2 security guards, told them he would teach them a lesson. He jumped a train station barrier and he was spared jail. Tony Blair as well urging Ed Miliband to abandon green levies. Guess what? The 300 quid off our energy bills that we were told he would save, well, apparently that's not happening anymore. Huge shock there. In Northern Ireland, Soldier F has been found not guilty of all charges in regard to Bloody Sunday. That, of course, happened 50 years ago. King Charles also becoming the first head of the Church of England to pray publicly with the Pope. A lot of people had some opinions on that yesterday. If you have opinions today, let me know. I can see the phones going already. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV. Follow me at Peter Cardwell. You can also send me a voice note. You can send me a WhatsApp text message or give me a ring, all on the main number 0344 499 1000. Let's get started here on Talk and get your views on the air between now and 7 o'clock. Well, on this rape gangs inquiry, there's just been such incredibly slow progress. It's been 16 months that the government's been in. It's been 4 months since they finally capitulated and said, right, we're setting up this inquiry. It's actually happening, despite having voted against it previously. And earlier today, the leader of the opposition, Kemi Badenoch, she spoke about the slow progress of the inquiry being set up.
The fact that nothing has got going. And why is that happening? The Labour government needs to answer that. The safeguarding minister needs to resign. The victims have asked her to resign. I have said for many years that she is not good, for a long time, she's not good at this job. She is not a good safeguarding minister. We need somebody who is competent, who can make sure the inquiry gets going.
Kemi Badenoch there. Well, this is the view of the Reform UK leader Nigel Farage when he spoke to Talk this morning to Jeremy Kyle about the grooming gang scandal.
The rest of the world is looking on at this with total and utter incredulity. This must rank as one of the greatest moral stains on our country. Not just the fact that it happened, and probably is still happening, even though people like Mayor Khan in London deny it. It's the fact that nothing's been done about it. Yeah. It's the fact that the police, the social services, councillors, MPs who knew about this willfully did nothing. There are many, many, many Labour MPs in seats that have got big Pakistani, Kashmiri communities, and they can see what the so-called Gaza independents are doing. And if they fear, if they're seen to get tough on Muslim extremism, it'll cost them their seats. That's just how shameful this whole thing is.
Nigel Farage speaking to Jeremy Kyle this morning. Well, what do you think? 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. I want to hear your views on all of this. The grooming gangs, rape gangs inquiry falling apart. What should happen? Who should chair it? What should the progress of it be? Surely we can get this up and running. Surely we can get justice for those women who have been through, and men as well, who've been through such horrendous things from predominantly Pakistani Muslim men. Dr. Rakib Hassan is with us, a social policy analyst. Rakib, thank you for joining me today. How have we got to this ludicrous position where months have elapsed, where there is no chairman or woman, and we have 4 victims pulling out and saying that they have no confidence in the Minister for Safeguarding, Jess Phillips at the Home Office?
Well, firstly, Peter, I think according to very recent reports, I think that number's increased to 5 now.
Okay.
Quite remarkably. And I think in terms of how we got here, I think it's very clear that the Labour government, they're holding this national statutory inquiry into grooming gangs very reluctantly. If you remember the Prime Minister, when there were people calling for a national statutory investigation into grooming gangs, he was suggesting that these people were jumping on some sort of far-right bandwagon. That's the kind of language that he used. And ultimately, the Labour government was cornered into holding this public inquiry, national public inquiry, because Baroness Louise Casey made that recommendation as part of her sort of that sort of a snap audit into the societal and cultural drivers into group-based child sexual exploitation. And I think that what you see here is, firstly, when you look at the Labour government, they're holding this very reluctantly, and I don't think they gave it much thought in terms of shortlisting the candidates who could chair the inquiry. Now, there's nothing against the individuals, but to choose one individual with a policing background and the other in social work, I don't think that's very sensible, because they have an institutional background which is very closely related to the institutions that failed many grooming gang victims and survivors across the country.
I can totally understand why you've said that and where you're going with that, and I can totally see the perspectives of the victims in regard to that, and I'm not in any way minimising their concerns around that. But someone like Jim Gamble, who I know a bit, I wouldn't say we're friends or anything, I wouldn't say we know each other really well or anything, but I respect Jim Gamble, and I think he has done an awful lot to stop child exploitation. He's been a senior officer, but it's really interesting that the toxicity of this issue shows that really anybody who has been part of the social work or has been part of policing isn't trusted by these victims to look at it. I trust Jim Gamble. I think he'd be a really good chairman of this, but I totally understand not an argument about him personally necessarily, but just simply he was a police officer, therefore these people are not happy about that. So should it be a judge? Who should it be, Rakib?
No, and I'd make this point. Jim Gamble and Annie Hudson, who is the other shortlisted candidate, this is not about their track record, and this is nothing against them as individuals. This is ultimately about holding a national statutory inquiry into grooming gangs, which commands public confidence, but is ultimately trusted by the victims and survivors. And that wasn't the case when it came to those shortlisted candidates. In terms of who could be chair, I think that I think it needs to be a judge-led inquiry. But I think that because I've made this point before, and we've talked about this before, Peter, I think because we're talking about a nationwide scourge which implicates various organs of the British state, I'd actually suggest having a foreign judge. I think that's how much distance I want the chair to have.
It's really interesting you mentioned the distance in that, because certainly, sorry to bang on about Northern Ireland again, but certainly when there have been inquiries in Northern Ireland, they've used, in one case anyway, they used a Canadian judge to do a public inquiry who understood the UK legal system, but at the same time was not part of it, and that is something you've got to have the confidence of the victims. Just on Jim Gamble, actually, we spoke to him earlier on, Julia Hartley-Brewer spoke to him. He withdrew from heading up the inquiry. He discussed the need for a cross-party solution to ensure progress.
It took 2 months to get here, but we are here now. The Home Secretary and the Prime Minister have made clear in their statements that this is going to go forward. It's not going to be diluted. So I think echoing victims' voices is absolutely right, but echoing them and weaponizing them from one political party against another is just not helpful, because none of them have covered themselves in glory.
True.
I genuinely think they need to get into a room together, all of the parties, say, look, the principle we agree on is there needs to be an inquiry. How can we collaborate and lead by example so that there is a cross-party approach to this? And I just found it, really concerning that victims and survivors were being caught in the crossfire of parliamentary debate in what I saw as an unhealthy and unhelpful way.
Okay.
And Rakib, you're absolutely right in regard to that fifth abuse survivor. In the last few hours, Carly, who's not a real name, has joined 4 other abuse survivors who've accused Jess Phillips of betrayal over a letter where she described reports the scope of the inquiry could be expanded as untrue. Carly told the BBC she wanted to remain part of the inquiry, in contrast to the 4 survivors who said they would only rejoin if Phillips stood down as a minister, but she said she agreed with their criticisms. This is a real crisis for the government. It's a crisis for the thousands of victims who've been through this, Rakib. Where do they go from here, do you think?
Well, I think there needs to be three key things that the Labour government has to do if it wants to shore up public confidence in the national statutory inquiry into grooming gangs, but ultimately restore trust among the victims and survivors of such heinous sexual crimes. I think one is that I think that Jess Phillips needs to be fired as safeguarding minister. I think that I think her position for me is untenable. I'm very surprised that the government has come out to and backed her so strongly. I think that she's a very serious problem in all of this, and it doesn't seem like she commands much confidence among those who are part of this victims and survivors panel, liaison panel. I think that also we need to make it very clear here that no stone is left unturned, and the government needs to come out and say that ethnic, cultural, and indeed religious potential factors, will be thoroughly investigated in a national public inquiry into grooming gangs. And I do think there needs to be judge-led, and I think that an experienced judge with relevant experience, maybe from a country like Australia, which has made significant strides in terms of tackling their grooming gangs crisis, because they did have one. There's no two ways about that. I think that would be a way of restoring public confidence in all of this.
Let me ask your opinion on a couple of other aspects of the news today, including France backing away from a pledge to crack down on small boats. Figures show over 60,000 migrants have entered the UK under Starmer, and the one-in, one-out scandal we talked about yesterday, this guy who came across in a dinghy, we then deported him to France, then he came over again. I mean, are we going to have to take more French migrants as a result if we get rid of him again? I mean, this system is simply not working, is it, Rakib?
The system is absolutely dysfunctional, and I think this particular story here shows that our borders, national borders, operate. It's almost some kind of revolving door system here when it comes to illegal migration, and I think that is very clear. I think that now we've breached the 60,000 mark under Sir Keir Starmer's prime ministership in terms of the number of small boat migrants who have arrived on our shores, and I think it really shows that smashing the gang strategy, that was never going to work. In terms, it was never going to be some kind of magic bullet in terms of sorting out small boat migration, which are arriving on the English south coast. I think we need to really look at our relationship with the ECHR. I think that's very important. In my view, I think it may well be time that the UK withdraws from that in order to have genuine national sovereignty over matters of immigration and border security. Also have to look at our relationship with refugee conventions too. But I think crucially, we need to look at our own our own domestic legislation, because I think that when we look at our human rights architecture, Peter, I think far too often the interests and the rights of foreign nationals, including those who break the law and enter the UK without permission, they're prioritised over the collective security of law-abiding British citizens, and that isn't sustainable, and that shouldn't be allowed to continue.
Rakib, as always, thank you. That's Dr. Rakib Hassan, a social policy analyst. What do you think about what he said? 0344 499 1000. That's the number that Janice in Essex has called. Janice, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Hi, Peter.
Hi there.
No speak.
Yep.
I think Jess Phillips needs to go. As a woman of a certain age, 70s, I've had all this stuff through my life. Me and my friends, you couldn't get on a train without being accosted. I couldn't get off a train in London without being accosted. And all my friends got raped. One of them got gang raped. But you couldn't go to the police because, number one, they wouldn't believe you. And number two, the perpetrators were going to slit your throat. So this is nothing new. It's been going on for years, but not at the horrendous rate that this is. And I'm really sad for these young ladies. They must be believed. Now, we must need Jess Phillips as a disgrace.
I'm so sorry to hear your experience. Janice, I'm so sorry to hear your experience.
Lots of women get all this stuff.
Yeah.
Not as bad. Not as bad.
Janice, I'm so sorry to hear your experience and the experience of your friends.
It's normal.
Have you? It should never be normal. I mean, do you think there's any way we can get a grip of this? Is there any way we can stop this?
Well, we have to. We've got to stand up now and say women just don't have to put up with this anymore.
Yeah.
Just because someone accosts you on a train, or you're walking to work, or you're walking to the shops, and you get someone coming at you, it doesn't mean to say we've got to keep putting up with it.
Janice, thanks for your... Oh, sorry, you had a final point there. Go ahead, Janice.
Well, not a lot.
Okay, well, listen...
I know a lot of friends have had the same thing.
Yeah.
Just not as bad as these young ladies, mate. not as bad.
Well, I'm so sorry to hear all of that, Janice. Thank you. That was Janice in Essex there. If you have experienced the issues that she's talking about or have been distressed by what she said, talk.tv/helplines is a really good list of resources of people to ring and get more information about those. Let's hear a voice note from Steve in Hertfordshire.
Every day when I get out of bed and head to work, I think to myself, there's no way that this government can stoop any lower than they did the day before. But every day they seem to be able to prove us wrong. So today the hapless Keir Starmer gives his full backing to that arrogant, sneering woman, Jess Phillips, spitting once again in the eye of the victims of the rape gangs. And now we find out that the £300 manifesto pledge about a reduction in our energy bills won't happen. Another lie, another day, another lie. How do we get rid of them, Peter?
Steve, we've got to wait till the next election, and certainly the point that you make in regard to the £300 we'll be talking about very, very shortly, and they knew at the time that was never going to happen. That was never going to happen. Thank you to Andrea in Sheffield, who says Rupert Lowe should be the head of the inquiry. He is passionate about finding out the truth and he is trustworthy. Betty's been in touch and says we are both from opposite sides of the fence and the same age. I never had an issue with 95% of the soldiers in Northern Ireland. They were just kids doing a job. Specific prosecutions for murder are fair in any conflict, but these trials are about getting the guys or ministers who issued the orders named to embarrass Tories and old establishment that Harmer and Labour detest, says Betty. Betty, I totally understand where you're coming from. This trial, of course, if Soldier F happened, was in train well before the Labour government, but I would imagine Lord Harmer, who I believe is the most dangerous man in the Labour government, will be dismayed that Soldier F hasn't been convicted. Joanna in Salisbury says, hi Cardi P, the Soldier F stuff was grandstanding. Most very young men, some of them, made statements at the time to commanding officers without a caution for things that happened on their watch. The real persons responsible were the commanding officers in 1972 and Bloody Sunday in Northern Ireland. They're extremely old or even dead. The young men of the time now are in their 70s. And Stephen in Belfast, final one on Soldier F, says the disgrace that Soldier F was ever brought to trial. Who amongst us would put on a uniform and be prepared to lay down our life for the protection of others? And this is the way we treat them. Combat is awful and not a sterile environment. We should not be prosecuting our military 50 years after the atrocity, says Stephen in Belfast. Let me just put something to you, Stephen, and anybody else who's thinking about Soldier F. If something happened 50 years ago, but you're still hurting now and you still think, you know, justice hasn't been done, should justice be done? Or should there be a time where you say, actually, justice can't be done anymore, it can't be done reliably anymore because such a long period of time has passed and things like forensic evidence won't exist anymore? It's a big, big issue. We're going to get into it a little bit later on with Simon Diggins, but just in a second we're going to talk to Robert Bates from the Centre for Migration Control about what France has been doing. Also this horrendous story about the Sudanese migrant who attacked 2 security guards, told them he would teach them a lesson after he jumped a train station barrier. Guess what? He's not going to jail. Stay with us here on Talk.
resign?
Absolutely. I think the way that she conducted herself yesterday in the House of Commons was disgusting. I think you really need to look at her now and think, how are you one that liaises with survivors and victims when you can't even contain yourself, when you're national, you go in public? She was embarrassing and she was angry. But the question is now, why were you angry? Is it because it didn't go how you wanted it to go?
Why people are frustrated because the political system isn't responding to those needs. And we have things like, I mean, in Essex, where obviously the Bell Hotel in Epping was the kind of trigger for a lot of the protests initially in this country, and yet Essex was an area where elections were cancelled early this year, and they're being talked about being cancelled for next year. So if people don't have
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thanks to everybody who has been in touch, including the person who sent me a message on Twitter. Lenny in Ashford, who says, I believe a priority debate is needed. Is Labour fit to govern our country? They gain power with lies and scamming. Is it time for more positive action? Well, one of those things they said this would sort out is, of course, migration. Robert Bates is with us from the Centre for Migration Control. He's its research director. Robert, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Peter.
Tell us about France. Backing away from a pledge apparently to crack down on small boats. I mean, we give them a huge amount of money every year, yet they've taken the foot off the gas on this. There are internal French political issues here as well, but perhaps also the fact that they just don't want to do it.
Yeah, well, I think they've not really ever had their foot on the gas when it comes to helping us with the small boats crisis. You're absolutely right. We've given them about £500 million in recent years in what is really the blind hope that they would somehow step up their enforcement activity on the coast and actually stop those boats from leaving their shores. But I think what we are seeing is that if we, as Britain, tether ourselves to another nation in the hope that they will help us solve what is effectively our own internal problem, then we are at the whims of their own political winds. And this is exactly what we're seeing now. We're seeing sort of real hesitancy and real grandstanding, actually, from French politicians recognising that their domestic politics really puts them in a position where cooperation with Britain and helping Britain actually stem the flows into our country isn't actually perhaps a vote winner or very popular domestically. And that's why we're seeing really the rowing back of an engagement and conversation with France that I don't think was ever actually needed. I think if we'd put in place a strong deterrent ourselves, if the Labour government had come in and really doubled down on the third country deportation programme, started having those third deal agreements with countries of origin, then we wouldn't need to rely on France to stop those flows, because the deterrent effect would have been put in place in naturally anyway. So really, this is the problem of Starmer's own making, and of course it comes in a really bad week for Starmer when it comes to immigration. It's not just France, it's some of the deals that he's been talking up with Balkan nations of return sort of processing.
Yeah, what do you make of that? We spoke actually to an Albanian journalist yesterday about the Balkan issue. Starmer dealing with that, saying there's a kind of backdoor into Europe, and then of course many of those people come across mainland Europe, come into this country. Can more be done here? Has Starmer got the right approach there? What do you think?
Well, it is a big route into Europe. It's not quite the biggest, but it is absolutely right to identify that the Balkan route is one of the bigger ones. But again, that is almost an issue that the European Union has with its external borders. It isn't really until it reaches the English coastline a problem that we should be looking to get ourselves too enmeshed in. I think Starmer really spoke up earlier this year, this idea that we as Britain would be able to send individuals to countries such as Albania and Montenegro, both of whom have had their prime ministers in recent days come out and say, well, that's not really something we're prepared to do. Sorry, mate. So this is, again, a prime minister that is scrabbling around. He's talking a very good talk, grabbing the headlines, but then when you actually look at what's going on with those negotiations take place, you realise a lot of it is empty promises. And until he realises that his whole edifice that he's constructing, this really elaborate, complicated means of tackling the boats, can be solved very straightforwardly, then we're going to continue to see those boats coming across the English Channel.
Yeah, Margaret in Birmingham has been in touch and says, am I missing something here? We give France millions, now they're backtracking. Starmer, get on the phone and ask Macron for our money back. Just for once, have a backbone, show leadership. Also, you should hold a Cobra emergency meeting. Immigration is out of control, says Margaret. I think it's out of control for many reasons. I just want to talk about about this particular story, Robert, about a Sudanese migrant, 30 years old, who attacked 2 security guards. Will you hear some of the detail of this? He said he would teach them a lesson after jumping a station barrier. He's been spared jail. This is Karam Abdul Karim Mohammed, who called the guards mother effers after they stopped him at Reading railway station. He punched one man twice in the head. He spat at another. He lives in the Roundhouse Hotel, lives in a hotel at our expense in Bournemouth. Attacked a woman during a separate incident in the seaside town. After being set upon by a group of teenagers, he pulled out a pocket knife, waved it at them, lashed out at 3 strangers who tried to intervene, striking one woman on the arm. He was arrested for assault, carrying a knife and carrying cocaine. He walked out of court. He was given a 16-week prison sentence, suspended for 12 months and ordered to pay compensation to his victims. Now, I would be very sceptical as to whether those victims will get any compensation, and he will not spend a minute behind bars because of this. Robert, your thoughts?
It's exactly right, and most importantly, actually, the nature of the sentence means that he isn't eligible for deportation as a result of these crimes as well. So he will continue sort of being in that throughput of the asylum system. And I think, when you recognise that this isn't just one incident, there is actually, him being caught with drugs, him carrying a knife as well. This is clearly a dangerous individual that the vast majority of people in the country would look, even if he had perhaps a legitimate asylum claim, really, do we have the wherewithal to properly vet him? Do we have the wherewithal to properly deal with, clearly, the security threat that he does pose to the British public? And it's getting to the point now where we're seeing an endless procession of these stories. Of course, we've just seen another migrant staying in a hotel who's been convicted of sexually assaulting 3 women. Again, he has not been given the requisite 12-month sentence that would make him eligible for deportation. He's been given sort of 200 hours of community service. This is a ridiculous situation, not just because we're allowing these individuals into our communities, but then actually when they are running up foul against the law, I think, frankly, they're being given incredibly lenient sentences for the nature of their crime.
Yeah, and actually, Abdul Karim Mohammed, legal status still unclear. When he appeared at Poole Magistrates Court for sentencing, he wore a pair of Nike Air Jordan 4 trainers, which usually retail at £300. I wonder how this thug, who was arrested for assault, carrying a knife and carrying cocaine, could possibly afford those. I wonder if there are any further reasons why that might be the case. Robert, thank you. Appreciate that. That's Robert Bates there. He's from the Centre for Migration Control. He's their research director. Let's speak to Carl in London, who's given me a shout on 0344 499 1000. You can do the same thing. I want to get as many callers on the air between now and 7 o'clock. Carl, what's your thought on this?
Yeah, hi, for taking my call. Look, stopping the boats is the easiest thing that could be done, and I'll tell you why. Starmer and Macron are buddies. They're always hugging each other. They're great friends, right?
Yeah.
Well, so Starmer says to Macron, look, if I don't stop these boats, I might be out of a job. What I want to do, Mr. Macron, when we pick them up from our border ball specials, we want you to allow us to drop them straight back to France.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what will happen is the boats won't come to the UK. They go straight back to France, but it'll stop the boats in the UK, but it also stop the thousands of people coming across to France to get to the UK. So then Macron can say, anyone who comes to France will never get put in the UK.
Yeah,
it's so simple.
Mm-hmm,
Why don't the pair of them get their heads together and do this? I can't understand why they don't do it. I really, it's been in my head for about 2 weeks.
I know what you mean, Carl, and I think that so many people will be baffled as to why this problem simply cannot be sorted out. And sometimes I just think it's political will. It's these leaders wanting to sort this out that stops them doing so. Now, they would say things like the European Convention. Yeah.
Macron and Starmer could stop the boats tomorrow if they wanted.
Yeah.
If they actually want it, it's so easy. They could stop it tomorrow.
Yeah.
And any deaths in that channel from now on is down to Macron and Starmer, because they could stop it tomorrow. It's as simple as that. The pair of them could stop it.
Carl, thanks for your thoughts.
It's not rocket science, Peter. They could stop it if they wanted to.
Carl, I really appreciate your thoughts. That's Carl in London there. If you want to join him on the air, 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Betty says the inquiry in regard to rape gangs should be handed to Interpol or MOD police with a foreign independent judge. Sarah's been in touch from West Sussex. He says Jess Phillips has sadly demonstrated she's out of her depth, unsuitable to hold this ministerial position. Her performance this week in the House of Commons showed her to be composed when reading from her prepared script, but she was somewhat of a Jekyll and Hyde character when having to answer questions. She calmed down only after her behaviour was commented on politely by a Tory MP. Yeah, we spoke about that. We played that clip actually, and we spoke to Matt Vickers, the Shadow Home Office Minister, about it yesterday. To compound this, says Sarah, Phillips then called two of the survivors liars, unacceptable and unprofessional. It is such a mess. Now, she denies, of course, that she has gaslit those victims, but we know from those victims what they have said. Carly, who's not her real name, has joined those 4 abuse survivors, accusing Jess Phillips of betrayal over a letter where she described reports the scope of the inquiry could be expanded as untrue. She told the BBC she wanted to remain part of the inquiry. That's in contrast to the 4 other survivors who said they would only rejoin it if Jess Phillips stood down as a minister. But Carly, this person that's not her real name, says she agreed with the criticisms. Another person says, rather than appointing a judge from abroad to head the grooming gang inquiry, has there been any consideration to appoint a Judge Advocate General? They are independent as the head of the service courts. It is a standalone role and not supervised by the presiding judge or Chief Justice. Thank you for that. Also, on Soldier F, quite a few people getting in touch with Soldier F. Now, Soldier F was one of the army members of the army who was there on Bloody Sunday in Northern Ireland in 1972, 53 years ago, when 13 innocent civilians were killed by the army. That was a protest that went horribly, horribly wrong. It has been a symbol of something that was wrong, was really a dreadful thing that happened during the Troubles in Northern Ireland, and David Cameron a few years ago apologised after a big report, a big inquiry, another inquiry actually, that was headed by Lord Justice Saville. Stephen says there should be a statute of limitations on cases like this, like Soldier F. Can you tell me what you were doing 20 years ago, but 50? Witnesses are unreliable and many dead. You just have to accept that life often isn't clear-cut. Spend the time trying to forgive, not hating. Well, it's really interesting, Stephen, you mentioned that, because I worked in the Northern Ireland office. I remember talking to someone intimately involved with dealing with the families and talking about the fallout from the Saville inquiry originally on Bloody Sunday, and he said there were really 3 groups of victims of and the families of Bloody Sunday. One group said, right, we've got this inquiry, the people have been totally vindicated, the army did the wrong thing, the people were innocent civilians, that's out in the open, David Cameron's apologised for it, great, we're going to move on with our lives. Then there was a second group that said, right, now we're going to start the judicial process and we're going to start prosecuting the people that killed these innocent civilians. That was the second group, and there was a third group, I think it was just one family, that weren't happy with the inquiry themselves. But it just shows truth, justice, whether it's in Northern Ireland, no matter what has happened, whether it's the rape gangs inquiry, whatever it is, truth, justice, the dealing with things that have happened in the past, the way to deal with that is often seen as very different by very different people, often who've gone through quite similar things. So it's a really interesting point. I'm going to talk to Simon Diggins, Colonel Simon Diggins, about it very shortly. We're also going to talk about Tony Blair urging Ed Miliband to abandon green levies. What do you think of all of this? Whatever topic is on the tip of your tongue today, let me know. 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thanks to everybody who has been in touch, including Brian, who says, good afternoon, Peter. With regards to these countries not accepting their nationals back, why on earth is this going on? Why don't we just turn around and say, OK, from now on, none of your people in your country can come to our country, do visas, nothing until they accept their own people back from Britain. Well, that is actually been mooted by a number of people, but of course Starmer hasn't done it. Andrew says, I thought with the one-in, one-out deal that anyone returning was automatically going to be deported with no right to remain. Well, I think we were sort of sold that. We were told that, certainly, but no, that apparently won't happen. And this Iranian man has talked about his right to stay because he has apparently been a victim of human trafficking. Funny how he didn't say that the first time. Maybe he forgot. Right then, let's talk to Maurice Cousins. Maurice is the campaign director of Net Zero Watch. Maurice, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Peter. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Probably a bit better than Ed Miliband. The economist Powell Sizak told the BBC analysis needs to be updated to take into account changes of the cost of offshore wind and other factors. I, for one, am shocked, I tell you, that Ed Miliband's promise to cut energy bills by £300 could end up as a lot of hot air. What do you think, Maurice?
Well, I mean, it's been a dreadful 24 hours for Ed Miliband. I think there's been 3 stories today in the space of 24 hours that have really been a body blow to his election campaign slogan that he would save us £300 off our energy bills.
It was always nonsense, wasn't it, Maurice? It was always just absolute nonsense.
Always nonsense. It was divorced from physical reality. That's really what it comes down to. All energy systems are governed by the laws of thermodynamics, and everything that Ed Miliband and the Labour Party have been proposing for decades now defies those laws. You know, what we have done really since 2005, when electricity production in this country sort of peaked, is we have engaged in a deliberate policy to de-densify the production base of our electricity system. In 2005, 95% of our electricity generating sources were from firm sources: coal, gas, nuclear, even a bit of oil and a tiny bit of hydro. And today, it's about less than half of that comes from firm sources. And what we've been doing is we've been producing electricity from intermittent, low-density sources like wind and solar. And as a result, the end of all of that, we have the highest industrial electricity prices in the developed world. That is the record of both Labour and the Conservatives.
Yeah, listen, I think a lot of people will agree with exactly what you're saying there. And talking about people divorced from physical reality, Tony Blair has urged Ed Miliband to abandon his clean power targets. Could a stop clock be telling the right time twice a day?
Look, I've read the Tony Blair report. It's not a bad report. I don't agree with everything in it, but it is yet again another body blow to Ed Miliband. I think that the Tony Blair Institute is right in what they're saying. We should ditch the clean power agenda. I know they've sort of couched it in classic Westminster lingo about recalibrating and reframing it, but really they're saying it needs to be ditched. And what we need to be able to do is also to stop this AR7 and AR8 auctions, which Miliband wants to push through.
What are those? Just tell us through that. I'm not familiar with those. I don't think a lot of our viewers and listeners will be either. What does that mean?
So the AR7, it's allocation round 7. It's to bring on a load of renewable energy into the system to help him to meet his Clean Power 2030 target. And these are critical, really, for that. And what these will end up doing is pushing up bills. And the reason why they will push up bills is because they will increase the fixed costs of the system. So what we will end up having is more of this intermittent, low-density energy generation source on our grid. And it'll mean it's important to remember this. It's not just the subsidies that will push up your bills. It is also these things what they call systems costs, which are essential for the operating of the grid. And those things will never go away with the amount of with these renewables when you bring them on. They will be a permanent feature of our electricity bills. And the Tony Blair Institute, they're sounding the alarm on a lot of this. Although I'm a bit confused because they do seem to think that we can still have lower bills with renewables on the grid, or making up the most part of it. It's a bit confusing.
Well, I know what you mean, but certainly there's so much clarity that has come, certainly when Tony Blair is saying that the pledge to decarbonise UK electricity by 2030, destroying industry, damaging households, and that the £300 reduction just isn't going to happen. I mean, there are so many people, not unlike yourself, Maurice, who were saying this for years. Why is it taking so long for the establishment to catch up?
I think it's unavoidable now. Because of the cost of living crisis. I think it's reached such a point where it's dragging more and more people in certain income brackets who perhaps might not have noticed these sorts of things before. But you're now getting middle class families that are being dragged into this problem, and we've got reform ahead in the polls. That is obviously putting pressure on both Labour and the Tories. The Conservatives have broken ranks on the climate change agenda, and Labour now has to sort of really examine whether or not any of this really adds up. They don't have the support anymore of the Conservatives as to what they're doing. So I think it's a combination really of the politics catching up with the physics and the economics.
Yeah. Listen, thank you as always, Maurice. That's Maurice Cousins there, Campaign Director of Net Zero Watch. Shan in Cardiff says Jess Phillips will be gone by the end of the month. If she has Keir's support, then she's done. Like many before, she's under Keir's curse. That they never last long after that, says Shan in Cardiff. Yeah, Shan, you're absolutely right. The last thing I ever want to happen is Keir Starmer to say he has full confidence in me. That means I'll be gone in like 60 seconds. Maybe there could be a film called that. Jane says, genuine question, why does the Prime Minister feel they're out of pocket if they give their kids breakfast, so free ones via the taxpayer will save them money? Funny way of thinking if you ask me. Joe in Norfolk says, love the show, Peter. Thank you, Joe. What is hypocritical of Starmer is that he stood up to say country first, party second. Well, he is allowing illegal migrants in, hoping they will vote for him, appeasing the Muslim community about Palestine for votes, and the rape gangs inquiry is being delayed as they do not want to upset Muslims, etc., so they don't lose votes. So Jess Phillips along with Starmer are really party first, country second, says Joe in Norfolk. Joe, I agree with the thrust of what you're saying. There's definitely a thought in Starmer's head about the Muslim vote, but I know many Muslims who will want this grooming inquiry, want to make sure that those men who perpetrated those horrendous crimes are brought to justice. And I think we just need to be careful about sort of generalising entire communities thinking they all think the same thing. I mean, I know obviously not everybody in Northern Ireland thinks the same thing, not every white person thinks the same thing, so why would every Muslim person think the same thing necessarily, Joe? But your message is, I totally see where you're going with it, and I agree with the thrust of it, absolutely. John says, I always wondered what happened to the circus clowns. Now I know they're in the government. And Jack says, call me crazy, Peter, but I thought an ex-lawyer would have had some form of signed contract before agreeing to hand over all his money to France. Very, very good point, Jack. Thank you for that. We're going to talk about the Soldier F issue. He's been found not guilty of the allegations in regard to murder on Bloody Sunday 53 years ago. How should we deal with this? What happens if it comes up again? Colonel Simon Diggins, former senior officer in the Army, Defence and Security Analyst, will join us in the studio in just a second. I want your thoughts on it as well. 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
democratic way of
more people driving electric cars, and of course that means fewer people filling their tanks up with petrol. And petrol, the levies on petrol, as your viewers will know, because they're the ones paying it. It's so expensive. That money's going into government. When government loses that money because more people are driving EVs, we do need to think about what the alternative measure looks like. What we want to get to through this cheaper energy commitment is that you make electricity so cheap that your viewers are saying, get me an electric car as quickly as possible.
Resign?
Absolutely. I think the way that she conducted herself yesterday in the House of Commons was disgusting. I think you really need to look at her now and think, how are you one that liaises with survivors and victims when you can't even contain yourself, when you're national, you're going public?
Yes.
She was embarrassing and she was angry. But the question is now, why?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Bloody Sunday happened in 1972 in Londonderry in Northern Ireland. 13 innocent civilians were killed. How to get truth and justice is a huge issue in Northern Ireland, but it doesn't just affect people in Northern Ireland, it affects people right throughout the United Kingdom and Ireland as well, actually, in regard to what's best. I worked in the Northern Ireland office for about a year and a half as a special advisor. Legacy, this idea of dealing with the past, was probably, apart from Brexit, the biggest issue we dealt with. It's a really tough one. There's also been today a verdict in a very important trial. Soldier F, he can't be named for legal reasons, he's been found not guilty of murdering 2 people on Bloody Sunday. The former paratrooper has been found not guilty of 5 counts of attempted murder, and 15 other people were injured, 13 people were shot dead during Bloody Sunday. That was when soldiers opened fire at a civil rights demonstration in a predominantly Catholic part of Londonderry. Well, this was the view of the Sinn Féin North Belfast MP John Finucane. He reacted shortly after Soldier F was found not guilty.
What jumped out at me initially is the fact that this prosecution appears to be undone or certainly damaged quite significantly, because at the time there was no appetite whatsoever to have any form of effective investigation into the murders and the multiple shootings that took place in Derry in 1972. The fact that the police had no interest, that the British military had no interest, the fact that those soldiers who did give cursory statements to the Royal Military Police told lies and then told lies after that. All of that quite perversely seems to have benefited the defence of Soldier F.
John Finucane there, who is the Sinn Féin MP for North Belfast. Well, Colonel Simon Diggins is with me, the Defence and Security Analyst, also former Defence Attaché in Kabul. Simon, I know you served in Northern Ireland yourself. What do you make of this verdict?
The first thing is I'm pleased that the verdict has gone the way it's going in terms of the not guilty. I'm of course not pleased by what happened at Bloody Sunday. I think any soldier who served in Northern Ireland, indeed all members of the British Army, would be ashamed of what happened, and that was very clearly laid out when, after the result of the second inquiry, both the then Chief of the General Staff, General Lord Dannett, and the Prime Minister made very clear to us and to the world, I hope, that what happened at Bloody Sunday was unjustifiable. So from the broad side, I mean, no question about it, what happened there was completely wrong. But as far as the individual culpability of this soldier, I think we've got the right verdict, not just on terms of the evidence itself, but also the difficulty of trying to establish beyond all reasonable doubt, as the judge said today, there's individual response for that cannot be happened. And over time, that becomes harder and harder.
Yeah, is it possible 53 years on to get truth and justice? Especially, I mean, there were lots of things the army did in the UK, right across the UK, but particularly in Northern Ireland, that kept people safe. The peace process would not have happened without the great bravery and distinction shown by nearly 300,000 people in uniform. There were some bad people who did bad things. There was a dirty war. There were people who did things that they should be held accountable for. How can we hold them to account? Is it possible so many years on?
With difficulty, I think is the honest answer. In which case, I think the answer is probably not necessarily to go for individual accountability, but to make sure we have the truth about what happened in general. I had the privilege of working in Africa at one stage, trying to deal with the post-conflict in Sierra Leone, and talking to my African friends and colleagues there, they talked about truth and reconciliation. So the emphasis was not on dealing with individuals, but making sure that whole truth came out about everything. Now, in the concept of Northern Ireland, that also means what happened with the terrorist attacks.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's missing completely from this.
It's missing from the debate, and the thing is that the IRA didn't keep records, and other paramilitaries as well, loyalist paramilitaries as well. They didn't keep records. They didn't have this. There isn't the same evidence to go into as there is with the UK Army, obviously. I just wonder. I mean, you talk about truth there, but if there is evidence that someone broke the law, even if that evidence is old, should there not be some prosecution?
If you can sensibly do that, I think the real concern is whether or not that is the only test that's being used, or whether some of these prosecutions have been done for political reasons in order to demonstrate that we are impartial. Now, I think the whole principle of jurisprudence is around equity, and I think you need to demonstrate equity. I do not want any British soldier who is guilty of murder or guilty of a serious crime to get away with it. What I do ask for from the British people and from the British public and from our law is that we're treated equitably. We always aspire to serve with honour and also in accordance with the law. What I ask, therefore, if we're going to serve with honour and in accordance with the law, that is applied equally. And I fear that particularly Soldier F and others, that has not been done. Hence his prosecution. He's been tried more than once on this occasion. In all cases found not guilty. Surely enough is enough.
Is there a sense now, in your mind, that the government has got it right in regard to how it will prosecute or not prosecute soldiers as time goes on? Because they want to repeal the act that the Conservatives put through. What is a system that should work? What is there at the moment, and what should be there, do you think?
I mean, I think the system that is currently the law, the 2023 Northern Ireland Legacy Act, is a reasonable compromise. It is only a compromise. I know it's been criticised from many different directions. I fear
the terrorists who won't face justice as a result of that act as well.
Absolutely. I fear that the changes they want to bring will actually swing the pendulum back into what I regard as an inequitable part of the legal system, which is actually so that soldiers, as you rightly say, who probably have records of what they did, will be tried, and what happened on the terrorist side will not be. And I don't think that really helps anybody. I mean, I have nothing but utter sympathy for the families of those who lost their lives there. I mean, I cannot imagine anything more horrible, and I say this as a soldier, but I also say it as a fellow citizen with them in that country. What happened to your families was horrible, and we got it really badly wrong.
Simon, just put that earpiece in your ear in a second and you'll hear Malcolm in Devon. He's given us a ring on 0344 499 1000. Malcolm, you're very welcome to the programme. Just a few minutes before the news, what would you like to say? You're on with me and with Simon Diggins.
As a soldier that served 2 tours of 2 years, so overall I did 4 years in the province as a military policeman, I want to know what our government are doing about all the murders of servicemen and service families from the IRA. Are they going to do this time?
Well, and that's the point that Simon has been raising, isn't it, Malcolm, when he's talking about equity here and the fact that, I mean, do you feel it's unbalanced? Do you feel that the things are balanced against the soldiers?
Of course it is. Of course it is. The soldiers are easy. They can catch them. They've got numbers, they've got ranks, they've got names. And then they ask us to turn around and say that we're going to register to make sure that we're on a reserve list. No, we won't. We're all suffering with PTSD because we've just been messed around. It is so wrong, and no one trusts this government.
Do you live in fear of... Do you think you and people like you, Malcolm, are living in fear of a knock at the door?
No. No. I know I've done nothing wrong.
Yeah, sure. But if there are people who have done things wrong, if there are people who have broken the law, should they face the law?
What, you mean like the IRA?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
but if there are soldiers who've done that previously, should they face the law?
Well, you talked of equity, so let's not say soldiers, let's talk about people, full stop. Let's talk about terrorists and soldiers.
Okay. Malcolm, stay where you are just for a second. I'm going to put that to Simon and then I'll come back to you if you hold on the line. Simon, what do you make of what Malcolm said there?
Well, I agree with it, basically. He talked in terms of equity, and I also think equity is the answer. I'd also like to correct something that Mr Finucane said, that there was no evidence taken. That is simply untrue. At the time after Bloody Sunday, evidence and witnesses were interviewed. The weapons were taken off the soldiers, and the weapons themselves were recorded. So there is information, there is an attempt to find what actually happened on the day. And I know that because many years later, when I served in Sierra Leone, we were looking to re-equip the Sierra Leone Armed Forces. And at one point, the weapons that had been used on Bloody Sunday were been sent to Sierra Leone, and then they were taken away again. So that evidence is there. He's wrong to say what he said.
Simon, thank you. Malcolm, just a quick reaction from you.
I think it's all wrong and very biased, and I think they're trying to appease the wrong people for the wrong reasons, and they should appease everybody for the right reasons.
Malcolm, thank you. I really appreciate you giving us a ring there. That's Malcolm in Devon there. Simon, what is the future for all of this, do you think? I mean, Malcolm was talking about people with PTSD, people who served their country, who did what they were told at the time. The vast majority of them did the right thing. Yet some of them, not Malcolm, but some of them are worried.
Yeah, I think they are, because they're not sure what's going on. I mean, one area I would like to explore more fully is what I've described as command responsibility. So what were the orders given? What was the atmosphere? What was the command culture, the operational culture, which saw outstanding battalions like the 1st Battalion, the Parachute Regiment, deployed at very short notice into places like Derry. Now, they are a good regiment and a very good battalion. What happened? Why did they behave the way they did? And I think we haven't really properly explored that. That's an area where I would put into the category of truth, and I'm not sure we've quite got there yet. All I can really say is I believe this is the time for us all to be completely honest about what happened, and that's not just us, but it's also the terrorists or the terrorist successor organisations.
Okay, Simon, thank you. Colonel Simon Diggins, Defence and Security Analyst. Great to have you in the studio today, especially. Lots more to discuss. Let me know what you think of what Simon said there. 0344 499 1000. Maybe you're a veteran or a military family. Get in touch. Let me know what you think. Plenty more to come.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good evening, it's just gone 5 o'clock. This is Talk Drive with Peter Cardwell. Thank you very much indeed for your company. We've just been hearing from Colonel Simon Diggins about Soldier F. He is not guilty. We've heard that in the news as well. Plenty of people getting in touch. We'll continue that conversation if you want to. He was at Bloody Sunday, and that's a big story today. Also, another big story, junior doctors have announced yet another strike, a 5-day strike over renewed pay demands. And said the government have failed to provide a credible plan to improve pay or job security. I would say if you're a junior doctor, your job is pretty secure. We need lots of doctors. They've had a huge rise previously. They've had 22%. Now they want another further 29%. Guys, sit down, shut up and get on with it, because so many people have not had anything near the kind of rises you're asking for, and the public have had enough of you. We're also talking about the rape gangs inquiry. The survivors demanding Jess Phillips resigns. She's the Home Office Minister, who of course has been campaigning about this for years. She is Safeguarding Minister and is apparently destroying trust in the inquiry. We'll talk as well about France backing away from the pledge to crack down on the small boats. King Charles becoming the first head of the Church of England to pray publicly with the Pope. We'll find out what is in the Sun sports section as well. Dean Scoggins will join us later this hour. We'll get all the details of the big sports stories today. Let us know your thoughts on all of this. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me at 7222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV, follow me at Peter Cardwell, send me a voice note, send me a WhatsApp text message, give me a ring, 0344 499 1000. However you want to contact me, I want to know your view, whatever is on the tip of your tongue this tea time. Let me know, 0344 499 1000. Plenty to discuss between now and 7 o'clock here on Talk. Well, earlier today, the Leader of the Opposition, Kemi Badenoch, spoke about the slow progress of the rape gangs inquiry.
The fact that nothing has got going. And why is that happening? The Labour government needs to answer that. The Safeguarding Minister needs to resign. The victims have asked her to resign. I have said for many years that she is not good, for a long time, she's not good at this job. She is not a good Safeguarding Minister. We need somebody who is competent, who can make sure the inquiry gets going.
Kemi Badenoch there, the leader of the Conservatives. This was the view of the Reform UK leader, Nigel Farage. He spoke to Jeremy this morning about the rape gang scandal.
The rest of the world is looking on at this with total and utter incredulity. This must rank as one of the greatest moral stains on our country. Not just the fact that it happened, and probably is still happening, even though people like Mayor Khan in London deny it. It's the fact that nothing's been done about it. Yeah. It's the fact that the police, the social services, councillors, MPs who knew about this willfully did nothing. There are many, many, many Labour MPs in seats that have got big Pakistani, Kashmiri communities, and they can see what the so-called Gaza independents are doing. And if they fear, if they're seen to get tough on Muslim extremism, it'll cost them their seats. That's just how shameful this whole thing is.
I must say I disagree with Nigel Farage on that. I don't think this is about Muslim extremism. I think it's about Pakistani Muslim men who may or may not have political views, may or may not be Muslim extremists per se, who are raping and have been raping and abusing girls. I think that's what it's about. I'm not sure it's about ideology. I think it's about the practicality and the horrendous criminal behaviour that they have done. Certainly there is a cultural aspect to this. I wonder what you think. 0344 499 1000. Maybe you think I'm talking nonsense, and that's okay, because on my shows we disagree without being disagreeable. Talk also spoke to Jim Gamble. Julia spoke to him earlier. He is a former senior police officer, child protection specialist. He withdrew from the inquiry. He told Julia about the need for a cross-party solution to ensure progress.
It took too long to get here, but we are here now. The Home Secretary and the Prime Minister have made clear in their statements that this is going to go forward. It's not going to be diluted. So I think echoing victims' voices is absolutely right, but echoing them and weaponising them from one political party against another is just not helpful, because none of them have covered themselves in glory.
True.
I genuinely think they need to get into a room together, all of the parties, say, look, the principle we agree on is there needs to be an inquiry. How can we collaborate and lead by example so that there is a cross-party approach to this? And I just found it, really concerning that victims and survivors were being caught in the crossfire of parliamentary debate in what I saw as an unhealthy and unhelpful way.
Okay.
Well, Graham Stewart is the MP for Beverley and Holderness for the Conservatives and joins us now. Graham, good evening to you.
Good evening, Peter.
I should say that Keir Starmer has given Jess Phillips his full vote of confidence, which is something I never, ever want him to do for me, otherwise I'll be down the job centre on Monday. Graham, tell me about the rape gangs inquiry. Tell me about what you think should happen. Is the solution to this Jess Phillips resigning?
Well, she is the safeguarding minister. I mean, you can see, as your footage will show, I mean, she's certainly emotionally invested in this, as she showed the other day in Parliament. But she's lost the confidence of victims. And, you know, Jess has got enough self-knowledge to describe herself as having a big ego. And I think she kind of regards herself as the premier person in caring about the welfare of women and girls. She's not the only person in Britain who cares about the safety of women and girls. And I think her voice has been too loud, and that of the victims too easily dismissed. And the feeling on behalf of victims the other day that she had described them as liars, has, I think, tipped many of them over to saying that she can't continue as a safeguarding minister. If you watch her performance in the Commons without the sound on, I think you get a kind of feeling of the emotional element there. We've got to stay calm about this. This was one of the most horrific things that's ever happened. It was done on an industrial scale for a complex series of reasons, too many of them self-interested. People basically turned a blind eye. And we know that Labour figures who fought on this, people like the Keighley MP and Cryer and others, were sidelined. In fact, some of them were forced out of the Labour Party. So the Labour Party has, as Nigel Farage was right, I know you took issue about his bit about extremism, and I agree with you there. But where he is right is that the fact that so many Labour MPs came close to losing their seats because of a strong Muslim vote means that they're not prepared to speak up on issues like this. And, you know, I think that's an insult to Muslim voters. The idea that Muslim voters are happy and comfortable with Asian rape,
or all think the same way.
Yeah, it's outrageous. And yet that is where they're at. And, you know, the fact that this thing has gone on and on, we called for an inquiry 10 months ago, and the thing is falling apart, and it's falling apart under the watch of Jess Phillips. It's her responsibility to make this happen. And when I, among others, questioned her earlier in the week, she was hiding behind blaming the charity that she asked to do this. And I asked her, I said, well, aren't you responsible? You know, if you appoint someone, do you have the power to intervene? She said, oh, yes, I do. Well, in which case, don't blame the charity. We've seen it.
You're the government. You're the government.
You're the government.
Yeah, it's often, I find it really interesting. I remember speaking to a Labour MP years ago when the Liberal Democrats were in government, and she kept talking about them saying, they say things like, we need to do this, we need a campaign for this, going, no, you're it. You're the people who decide. It's interesting as well, given the 5th abuse survivor calling on Jess Phillips to quit. Carly, which is not a real name, says that she agrees with the 4 abuse survivors who've accused Jess Phillips of betrayal over a letter where she described the scope of the inquiry could be expanded as untrue. Carly said she wanted to remain part of the inquiry, in contrast to the other 4 survivors, but who said they'd only rejoin if Jess Phillips stood down. I wonder, in regard to the personnel, this is something, I mean, we should know who the inquiry chair is, but we shouldn't know, well, we should know, it should be public, but we shouldn't be concerned, I suppose, about all the mechanisms of this necessarily, because 4 months ago, very clearly, Parliament voted for this, Labour said they were going to do it, and here we are 4 months on, and very little has happened. In fact, all that has happened are bad things. We have people, including Jim Gamble, saying that it wouldn't be appropriate for him to be part of it. Where do they go from here? What should they do? Maybe an international judge should be put into this. What do you think the solution is, Graham?
Well, we are saying that it should be a judge. Now, Louise Casey looked at this and suggested that it shouldn't be a judge. One of the reasons
Could she do it? Should she do it?
Well, she's doing everything else for the government because they're so lacking in anyone competent. They turn to Louise Casey for everything. We'll never get her. She's got so many inquiries she's dealing with, but the social care review that she's in charge of, we're never going to get it if we keep asking her to do other things. But one of the reasons for not having a judge, that Louise Casey said, was because we needed to move fast. and that was put up as a defence by Jess Phillips earlier in the week, to which the House of Commons understandably laughed.
Yeah, I was watching that live, actually. I was watching that live, yeah.
Yeah, and just... So, I mean, we'll try and be fair here. Jess Phillips pointed out, and I thought her strongest piece of evidence the other day was to say, well, actually, previous inquiries have taken 7 months and longer to set up. So it does take time to do these things. But then saying, well, we decided not to have a judge so we could do it quickly, and then failed to do it quickly. Makes it fall apart. I think Mr. Gamble is right. It doesn't look good if it looks like it's some sort of political point scoring, he put it. But that's our politics, and I don't think, I mean, there may be individuals who behaved badly or spoke badly. I hope I wasn't one of them. But it's the job in our adversarial political system to hold the government to account. And that's what Kemi Badenoch has done brilliantly, to push for an inquiry in the first place. And we know that we had not only the Prime Minister, but Jess Phillips herself voting against having an inquiry. And so clearly they've got trust to rebuild, and that's what they've failed to do. And we've got Labour local authorities who pushed against having an inquiry too. And, you know, you look at it and think, well, it's because of your electoral self-interest. What else is it? Why would you not want to look into what has happened on a horrific scale? So the whole thing is you know, it's just unpleasant, isn't it? It's we want to get on with it. I think Jess Phillips' position probably is impossible now. Even, I mean, not only because the victims have said that they want her to go, which should be overwhelming, but because I shouldn't make a joke in this sphere, but also because Keir Starmer said he's going to keep her. And once he said,
well, exactly.
It says that about you, whether you're Peter Mandelson or Ange or whoever it is, you know you're for the chop.
Indeed.
When Keir Starmer does it, and you know, he seems to be peculiarly ruthless. He publicly says he's backing you, and then privately, they're briefing out against you. So I wouldn't want to be the cabinet secretary right now.
Well, indeed.
Because they're saying publicly they're backing him, and then privately the briefings come out against him. It's everyone else's fault, Peter. Everything that's going on, from the economy crashing to the Chinese spy issue collapsing, it's everyone else's fault apart from Keir Starmer, and he doesn't mind who he throws under the bus, whether it's his deputy or whether it's anyone else. He'll throw them under the bus. And meanwhile, you've got Chinese spy cases not being prosecuted, and you have so many victims of this horrific crime.
Yeah, and also, I mean, many other political issues to deal with. Just before you go, Graham, I'd love your perspective on the junior doctors announcing a 5-day strike over renewed pay demands. Have they read the room here? They got a 22% pay rise a few months ago.
Yeah, well, it's, you know, if your way of dealing with a bunch of ravenous wolves is to throw a vast amount of steak on the ground, you will find that they stop chasing you for a bit. And Wes Streeting's been saying, "Oh, look, we've
solved this. Unlike the Tories, we've solved this." Yeah,
exactly. And for a few months, things, you know, the reduction in waiting lists, which was happening under the Conservatives, I might add, continued. And now for the last 3 months, it's gone into reverse. And the ravenous wolves, if you throw them a load of meat, funnily enough, they come after you with even greater intent because they think you're the guys with the meat. And that's exactly what's happening. They should never have had such huge pay rises. Giving it to them didn't make them become more responsible. It made them less responsible. And you look across, you've got a Labour government that came in, said that we're in a terrible financial state, and immediately paid out money to all the union all the unions, including the doctors, including the train drivers.
The train drivers,
And meanwhile, ordinary people are struggling to pay their bills. Inflation has nearly doubled to 3.8%. It means everybody going to the supermarket is struggling to pay and look after themselves. The economy is stagnant. And unfortunately, we're going to have a whole load of extra taxes and impositions on those who do go to work and do work hard and do try to get on. We're going to have that coming up next month. So it is a bit depressing. But going forward, they say that politicians will always do the right thing. Always, Peter. when they've exhausted all the alternatives. Well, this government is doing that in
Yes,
Spain.
indeed. Well, Graham, thank you. Graham Stewart MP there, Conservative MP for Beverley and Holderness. Enjoyed his reference there to Ange. He just had to say Ange. We all knew he was talking about like Sting or Madonna. She requires no surname. If only she'd paid her stamp duty. Under the Conservatives, of course, they want to abolish stamp duty. That's their policy. Thank you to Tina in Spain, who says the most obvious person to lead the grooming gangs inquiry is Maggie Oliver. I wonder why no one seems keen on this happening. She's a former police officer, an independent with no political axe to grind. I think she'd be a great person to do that, Tina. She'd know where to look as well. John says on the subject of immigration, both legal and illegal, it must be absolutely obvious by now to anyone with a brain that the steady and ever-increasing flow of immigrants into the UK is desired by those running this country. That applies equally to Labour and Tories because they are both carrying out globalist instructions, argues John. Let's speak to Joe in Bournemouth. Joe, of course, Bournemouth is a place that has had many migrants. There are many migrant hotels there. What do you make of this immigration issue?
Well, it's quite concerning, really, that, again, I mean, if I've got the facts right, we've got a knife-wielding, woman-beating chap who's now free to roam my local town.
Yeah, so, I mean, that's the story we were talking about earlier on. That guy has got a suspended sentence.
Yeah, and I can't fathom where the judges are at. Yeah, I've got children, and people wonder why you're saying, well, I'm worried about letting them go into their own town now.
Well, I'm not wondering, Joe. If I were a father of children living in Bournemouth, I'd do exactly what you're doing. And I mean, you must have seen Bournemouth change dramatically, very rapidly as well.
Very much so. And I will say Bournemouth is actually there's certain areas that are very multicultural. But I feel the problem we're getting now is it's causing problems where there weren't ever any problems. Because it's just creating more issues with race and everything, whereas there really isn't. People have got on for many years. I've been here for over 20 years. And now I just see a lot of things happening that really shouldn't be happening, especially with these judges. I don't know where they're coming from, why you wouldn't. I don't know where they live, in their ivory tower somewhere, where their children can hang around nice areas, but I can't understand what's going on with this country and the legal system.
Well, listen, I totally understand where you're coming from, and if you actually just, I mean, I read this out earlier, but I think I will again. This Sudanese migrant, he attacked 2 security guards, told them he would teach a lesson after he jumped train station barriers. He pulled out a pocket knife, waved it at a group of teenagers who were trying to stop him, lashed out at 3 strangers who tried to intervene, striking one woman on the arm, attacked the woman during a separate incident, and punched, in the first incident, punched one man twice in the head, spat at the other and called the guards mother effers. And I mean, he's clearly a nasty piece of work, and he was given a 16-week suspended sentence.
And I think as well, I think we need to start looking at, it's all well and good having some people allowed to stay in hotels and roam free, but I think when people do show that they're not nice people, we need to have detention centres that they're put into and they can't roam our streets.
I think I agree with you on that. Joe, thank you. That's Joe in Bournemouth there. And Laura in Perthshire says, for impartiality and background in justice, I think Joanna Cherry would make a good chairwoman for the rape gangs inquiry. That's Laura in Perthshire there. Barry's been in touch about Soldier F. He says it's very good news, may have a peaceful life. Unfortunately, I doubt it'll be the last veteran thrown to the wolves on the altar of appeasement by this weak government, who also says it's great news that he is not guilty. And I mean, there are many other people getting in touch on the phones as well. We'll take more calls later this hour as well. In just a second, we're going to talk to Rupert Bell, Talks Royal correspondent, about King Charles becoming the first head of the Church of England to pray publicly with the Pope. That has happened in the Vatican City. The King and Queen touched down in Rome around this time, actually, yesterday, and have prayed publicly with the Pope today. We'll talk to Rupert about that in just a second. Stay with us.
angry? Is it?
So I think, well, next best thing, and I put my cigarette down a drain cover. Out of the shadows.
How dare you?
Oh, yeah, I mean, you know, crime of the century, isn't it, really? Knock me up and throw away the key.
Well, in this country, yeah.
Quite clearly. Out of the shadows comes from Lambeth Council, Mr. Enforcement Officer, with, of course, his body cam on, just in case I give him any abuse, which I wouldn't.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Trevor in Derbyshire says, ask Baroness Kate Hoey to chair the rape gang inquiry. She's fair, straight-talking and will be acceptable to the vast majority, including the survivors. Jess Phillips might not agree, though. Becca in Norfolk says, Maggie Oliver is a campaigner and a whistleblower, so wouldn't be suitable for the inquiry as she's not impartial. It's not rocket science. She also had the chance to help Rupert Lowe in his private inquiry, but wasn't interested, says Becca. Jane says, the longer the Prime Minister keeps Jess Phillips, the more delays will happen, which will suit the Prime Minister and his government. And Jenny says, is there not a retired judge that could chair this inquiry? Maybe they're looking for one. Also, Natalia has been in touch. She says she's listening to the show in Tel Aviv. She says, hi Peter, mashed potatoes should be at the tip of my tongue in about half an hour. Good show. Great to have your company, Nat. And Angie says, I'm a former Brummie here. The city is still waiting for the truth and justice for the Birmingham 21. It will be 51 years in November. No one talks about this. The government hasn't and still doesn't want to act. Well, Angie, we have spoken to a family, very, very good campaigner on that. I think it was last year with the 50th anniversary. There's so many people, so many victims and survivors of what happened, including here in Great Britain, in England, Scotland and Wales, which of course faced what the terrorists did, what the IRA specifically did with their mainland campaign. That's often romanticised. There's a brilliant book about the mainland campaign, or part of it anyway, called Say Nothing, which I highly recommend. There's also a series about it as well. Right then, I want to talk about the King, because he's become the first head of the Church of England to pray publicly with the Pope. Rupert Bell is Talk's royal correspondent and joins me now. Rupert, good evening. How significant is this?
I think it's hugely significant and really reflects the King's sort of interfaith approach and multifaceted approach to it. And he was obviously due to meet the late Pope back in the spring, but his ill health precluded that, and so this one was arranged subsequently. But there's a lot of symbolism attached, and the King has met the previous popes, but in terms of this significance and praying together in such a symbolic gesture, the Archbishop of York was representing the Anglican faith. Yvette Cooper was there as well. The Queen was on hand as well. So I think you can see it as a very symbolic gesture, sort of uniting the two faiths in many ways. The King has always talked about that. He's actually always talked about a sort of broader church. Remember, earlier this week, he was at Heaton Park, and remembering the victims of the attack in the synagogue. But he also is very keen on a broader approach, which does draw some criticism. But this is, I suppose, an easy one to do, to bring the Anglican and the Catholic faith together in such a symbolic gesture in the Vatican.
The King, of course, is a deeply religious man. He's also the head of the Church of England. I just wonder, has there been any backlash to this? Has there been any criticism of it, perhaps? I mean, I think it's wonderful. It's a really good thing and good for the King for doing it. But I just wonder how people have reacted internationally to it, Rupert.
I don't think there's going to be too much bother. I think we live in a far more secular age.
Yeah.
And the impact of the Anglicans and the Catholics get together, if you go through history, it often led to all sorts of ramifications and problems. So as we are in a much more secular age, I think this is a symbolic gesture, but it really reflects we are a Christian nation. The Anglican faith is the predominant one. And let's be honest, the Anglican faith at the moment is we have to rely on the Archbishop of York to come along, because they seem to be taking an age to announce the new Archbishop of Canterbury, if I'm not mistaken. So They
have announced who it is. They've announced the woman who it is, but in terms of installing her, I'm not sure that's actually happened yet. But certainly, there took a long time after the scandals there. Speaking of scandals, actually, Rupert, I wonder, has the King staying away, obviously, from anything at all in regard to Andrew, but that rumbles on, doesn't it, and has proved quite a distraction. In fact, the palace themselves said it was a distraction from what the King was doing.
Absolutely, because again, all the headlines will be about, Keir Starmer maybe launching an inquiry, a complete distraction from what the King is trying to do, because Andrew dominates the news story as far as the royal family is concerned, and will continue to do so. And that is the big problem for the royal family. Now, the King has gone there, and he sees this as a very important gesture to go forward to unite the Anglican faith. But actually, in terms of what the wider public are concerned about is, well, what's happened to the Prince Andrew and what is really going on? Are all the things that were maybe redacted about what he was paying as his peppercorn rent and all sorts of things going on around his arrangement to live in Royal Lodge? Now, if they were all legally approved because and just verified, but again, it's all a bit unseemly and a bit of a mess, and it is a total distraction from what is going on. The King trying to go on a state visit that means so much to him personally, yet on the other hand, his younger brother is causing him a great deal of heartache with whatever's going on and taking away from the headlines of the King trying to go to the Vatican and have a deeply significant moment in his life.
Michael, Rupert, thank you. That's Rupert Bell there, Talks Royal correspondent. We have Michael on the line. Apologies for getting that mixed up. Michael in Taunton is on the line. Michael, I think you're probably not going to agree with me that I think it's a good idea that the King and the Pope got together. What's your perspective on this?
Yeah, you're not wrong on that one, Peter.
Oh, Michael, have we got you? Are you on the line? We'll try and get Michael back on a better line. We can't sadly hear him at the moment, but I think he's not too happy with the fact that the Pope and the King have been praying together. Phil has sent us a voice note. Let's hear what Phil has to say.
As usual, we're always talking about the migrants, aren't we? It seems to be endless. But regarding France, just retract their fishing licences. Just say, look, if you're not going to help us out, then what makes you think you have any right to our fish, our seas? You're not having it. Forget it, mate. It's over. And it's the same with the returns policy. We're always told that, oh no, the home countries won't accept them. Well, I'm sure if we looked at our legal aid list, our foreign aid list, there would be a lot of countries on there that we could quite easily turn around to and say, look, well, if you won't take your own people back, then you can forget about all your foreign aid payment.
Thank you, Phil. Appreciate that. The Press Association is reporting that a government source has told them that it could take months to find a chairman or woman of the grooming gangs inquiry. That is a government source talking to the Press Association. I'm not surprised at that. It seems to be taking a while. Michael in Taunton, I think we have back on a better line. Michael, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
That's much better. That's much better. Tell me your thoughts on this, on the Pope praying with the King. What do you think?
Well, for starters, they don't know the true God they're praying to, and that sounds quite controversial to say the least. I'm a Bible-believing Christian who would be classed as Protestant. Approximately 5 years ago, we had a split in the worldwide Catholic Church, and the Church of Rome, the Roman Catholic Church, didn't exist till then. You had men like Martin Luther realized they were fundamentally teaching the wrong way to get to heaven, basically, which is faith and trust alone in Jesus Christ. They were teaching plus works, plus our efforts, which is just obviously not true to what God says in the Bible. So Luther and other men went to the Pope hoping they would change, turn from their wrong teaching, only to be attacked, and war, nearly 100 years war started. Now this Prince Charles goes and praying what? The church in Rome hasn't changed on their theology.
I mean, they have. I'm sorry, they have. They've changed dramatically. They've had Vatican II. I mean, you can't say the Catholic faith hasn't changed in 500 years. It has.
They still hold to faith plus works. They idolize
and that's fine. That's a fundamental difference in regard to Catholicism and Protestantism. I get that. I studied the Reformation. I know a bit about it, Michael. But at the same time, two people praying together. I mean, you can pray to You can pray together. You don't have to believe every single thing that the other person believes to pray with them.
Well, Jesus Christ said that he's the only way to God in heaven. So, and Paul calls every other faith and religion in the Bible idolatry and not of God.
Do you think Catholicism is idolatry?
Yes, I do. It smells and smells and the most deceptive of all the Christian cults.
Okay, well, I don't think you can call a religion of about 1 billion people a cult, but Michael, nonetheless...
you'd be surprised, sir.
Okay, well, thank you for your thoughts on that. That's Michael in Taunton there, right about Martin Luther there, with his 95 Theses, defacing a perfectly good door in the process. Saw some Swiss guards there in the old footage there of what happened in the Vatican, and I always wanted to be a Swiss guard, but you've got to be Catholic, 6'2", and Swiss. And I'm none of those things. Leslie says, I disagree with Jim Gamble. If the opposition not challenged the government, this inquiry wouldn't even be happening, says Leslie. Lots more to discuss. Keep your messages coming in, and Jamie Jenkins will be with us next on the junior doctor strike. Honestly, read the room, guys. Jamie can give us his perspective on that. I'd like yours as well. 0344 499 1000.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, thank you to everybody who has been in touch. We'll get to more of your calls in a minute, but I want to speak to Jamie Jenkins first, the political and economic commentator. Jamie, I don't know about you, mate, but I'm just absolutely despairing at these junior doctors. Their strike and the row over jobs and pay. They're saying they want greater job security. I mean, they've got job security. I'm sorry, you've got job security if you're a doctor in this country. Loads of doctors will be doctors till the day they retire, and there's no issue with that. They're demanding a 29% pay rise. They've got 5.4% on average for this financial year. They also got a 22% rise previously. Should they just stop whinging?
Yeah, good afternoon, Peter. So there's pretty much 30% pay rise over the last 3 years, and the nub of their problem is they keep citing the fact that they're having a real terms pay cut when you go back to 2009 levels. But most of the economy has had real wage cuts since 2009. We had the austerity following the kind of the economic downturn in 2008, and the issue you've got here, I think this is going to be the 13th strike now since March 2023. The issue you've got is that the government's bust. We haven't got the money to even pay this. If you take, let's just look at it from an economic perspective with some of the data from the ONS this week. So if you look at the latest public sector pay rises, they're running, the average public sector wages are going up about 6.7%, and private sector's going up 4.9%. So that gap that you've got, Peter, if you work out if public sector was going up the same as the private sector, it's £5.5 billion extra that the public sector pay bill is, and that's going on the borrowing that the government's doing. So if the government was to even go anywhere near offering a big inflation-busting pay rise to junior doctors, the rest of the public sector will be asking it as well. And who pays for it? Me, you, and the taxpayer, and we haven't got the money to pay for it.
Will there be much sympathy for these doctors? Because there was sympathy previously to some degree, but the huge inflation busting nature of the rise from so many people who just want the NHS to work, people who haven't got anywhere near the same level of pay rise as these doctors are whinging about, I wonder how much sympathy you think there will be.
Well, there was a lot of sympathy a couple of years ago with them, and then they had that big, say, 30% pay rise over 3 years. So, but that's dwindling away. We know these strikes will cost lives because it takes some medical people from other parts of hospitals to cover some of these shifts. So you'll get delayed operations, you'll get some misdiagnosis because of this, and it will cost lives. So the sympathy is going there, and many of these junior resident doctors, whatever they want to call themselves next week.
I'll never call them resident doctors. They're always going to be junior doctors to me.
And the problem you've got, Peter, with this is that basically many of these joined after this so-called 2009 real terms pay cut they've got. So they've known what they're getting, and they jump on the bandwagon. And I think
that's what I want to say to them. I've challenged junior doctors on this. I've said, look, if you joined in 2015, if you've been a doctor for 10 years, are you only going to take the pay rise dated back to 2015? If you've only been there for 2 years, for example, are you going to take the pay rise that is related to your pay 2 years ago? You knew what you were signing up to, and there can't be too many doctors. What did you say? 2007 there? 2009?
Yeah, no, you're spot on there. No, you're getting paid a wage for doing the show today. You knew what you were signing up for. If you want to, everybody knows what they're getting. So that's the biggest issue. And the government say, like I said, they can't afford to cave in on this. But part of the reason they're coming back for more, Peter, is because when Labour come in, they actually started caving into the union demand. So it's a bit like, when you come and cave in once, they'll cave in again. So that is part of the big problem. The public sympathy's definitely gone from this. And strikes, they don't just cause the inconvenience, they could cost lives. That is the big nub of all of this.
Yeah. Listen, thank you very much indeed. That is Jamie Jenkins there, the political and economic commentator. Let's hear a voice note from Michael, another Michael, quite a few Michaels contacting the programme today. Anyone of any name is very welcome to contact the programme on 03444991000. That's the same number. You can send a voice note in. Michael's got one on the doctor strikes. This is what he has to say.
I happen to disagree with you on the junior doctors. The problem with the BMA is they're conflating pay and employment opportunities. We have a significant problem in the NHS that has imported 20,000 foreign doctors, and yet I think it is 30 to 50% of second and third year junior UK qualified doctors have insecurity of employment. Otherwise, they can't find their next job. This is a real problem that we are just going to make worse and worse until we sort out the NHS and training. The NHS is at fault. That's what needs to be fixed. Then the junior doctors will have a better situation from which to build a career.
Okay, Michael, I appreciate that. I'm happy to take that on the chin, and thank you for educating me on that point. Appreciate it. Thank you to Tom, who's been in touch as well. He says, this is the problem with religion in general, Peter. Michael, who you had on earlier, is another one who thinks his God is better than anyone else's. It's insanity. I'm slightly reminded of the great phrase from Jon Stewart, the American comedian, who says, religion, giving people hope in a world torn apart by religion. Let's go to Matthew in Cheshire now. He wants to talk about Soldier F. This is the trial today where Soldier F has been found not guilty of murder and attempted murder. Matthew, tell us your thoughts on this. You're very welcome to the programme today.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I think it's fantastic news. He should never have got to court. How anyone's expected to have a decent trial of something that happened over 50 years ago is scandalous. Tony Blair sold out the British Army when he did the Good Friday Agreement, sold us out. He gave everything to the Sinn Féin and the Republican cause. My regiment was out in Northern Ireland when the Good Friday Agreement was being negotiated, and the lads in Cop platoon, they thwarted an IRA plot, found some weapons, and a lot of the lads got put forward for the Military Medal and mentioned dispatches Gantry Medal, and Tony Blair personally intervened to stop that happening because he thought it would affect the peace agreement.
A lot of that happened, Matthew. I don't know the specifics of that story, but it wouldn't surprise me in the slightest if that was absolutely true. How long did you spend in Northern Ireland, Matthew?
I was at Ballykelly for just over 2 years, from 92 to 94.
That was a very difficult time. That was a really tricky time. You must have. Did you feel scared, or did you just get on with it?
No, because we were soldiers. We trained for it. There wasn't. If you wasn't just in normal duty.
Yeah.
In Germany or, elsewhere. At that time, Northern Ireland was the only combat posting. There was no, Gulf War had been the focus.
Yeah,
there was no Iraq. So we trained really hard, and every time we went out on patrol, it was all about hearts and minds. No one went looking for trouble. No one wanted to upset anyone. We just wanted to go out, protect the RUC, protect the public, and basically don't get blown up.
Well, I can honestly say I lived in County Armagh. My family still lived there, and I can honestly say that the army were our friends. There were people who helped us. There were people who made the peace process possible, and I want to thank you and every other member of the armed services who served in Northern Ireland and did so with great bravery and distinction. The problem is, as you know and I know, Matthew, of the 300,000 people who served over the course of the Troubles in uniform, whether in the army, the RUC, or other parts of intelligence services and so on, there were some people who did not do the right thing. There were people who fell short of the high standards that you and your mates upheld between 92 and 94 and many beyond. What should happen to them, do you think? Should there be should there be a form of justice? What do you think, Matthew?
No, the justice should have been done there and then. There's a lot of water gone under the bridge. You've got to remember, the Protestants and the Catholics did a lot of bad things to each other, and nothing was happened.
Do you think it should all you just completely draw a line under it and just move on?
Yeah, I think you should draw a line under it. Stop wasting good money on inquiries and stuff. Look, and I know, if you've never been to Northern Ireland, it is a culture shock. I can remember being sat in my girlfriend's house, and she was a Catholic, and they had, the priest used to come round on a Sunday, and it was all very nice. And then, boom, the first place I went to was Carrickmore. And Carrickmore is where the guys from Gibraltar got shot by the SAS. And
yeah.
Literally, 1 minute I'm in Warrington, in a pub having a drink. The next day, I'm in Carrickmore in the police station. The first thing you see is bullet holes in the tin.
Yeah.
And you go into the police station accommodation. The door's 2 foot thick, the walls are 3 foot thick, and it's bomb-proof. And my first ever patrol that I ever went out on, the first people we stopped was I won't say the names, but it was the commanding officer of the County Tyrone Provisional IRA. He's 2IC, and his bomb maker, and the RUC pulled us over and spoke to him. And we used to do Fermanagh every sort of 3-month cycle. We'd go down to Fermanagh and Carrickmore around there. And we got to know the IRA lads, and a lot of them would say, you guys are proper soldiers. We don't really have a beef with you. It's the Protestants and them who come down. When we used to go on the farms and stuff, they were happy we were there because it stopped the Protestants attacking them.
It's a very, very weird time. It was a really weird time at that time. I grew up at that time, and it was deeply strange. And I'm sure you learned a lot from it and took a lot away from it as well.
Oh yeah, you find out who you are, and you learn to work with people who you wouldn't do in normal situations. There's people in work, in normal life, that you wouldn't give the time of day. But when you're going out and you're doing 12-hour patrols in the boiler, you've got body armour on, and you've got to watch each other's backs.
Yeah.
If you don't, someone's going to get hurt. And, we was doing the when they blew up the patrol harbour in Londonderry, the PBs. We was on there on the rebuild, where they were rebuilding them all. And we came in one day, and because it was so hot, our platoon commander, we just laid up because we was exhausted, and we just went to ground. And when we come back in, they couldn't understand why we hadn't been blown up, because they knew that there was a divide.
Goodness me.
That's what it was like.
We always respected the soldiers who did so much. There was a big base, I'm sure you're aware of the Mahon Road barracks in Portadown, where many soldiers were stationed. And when I was around that time, actually, probably around the time you were in Northern Ireland, I remember we always respected the soldiers, but we're always, you know, a bit wary of them, obviously, as well. Just we're on our best behaviour, obviously, because they were enforcing law and order. And I was driving in, well, I was being driven into Portadown by my babysitter, who at that stage would have been about, I don't know, 25, 26. And a squatty stopped us at a checkpoint and asked for her driving licence and said, Madam, I'll require your driving licence. Said, yep, fine, okay, there it is. And goes, can you confirm your address? And he said, can you confirm your telephone number and whether you're free on Sunday night? Which I thought was a nice way of asking her on a date. I don't think she took it up. But Matthew, listen, thank you to you and your fellow officers and soldiers for their service in Northern Ireland. It is a really, really big issue, and we're going to get more reaction as time goes on all of this. There's quite a few people who have been in touch about this, and if you want to get your voice on the air like Matthew, the number is 0344 499 1000. We'll talk about the sport next. Stay with us.
So I think, well, next best thing, and I put my cigarette down a drain cover. Out of the shadows.
How dare you?
Oh, yeah, I mean, you know, crime of the century, isn't it, really? Knock me up and throw away the key.
Well, in this country, yeah.
Quite clearly. Out of the shadows comes from Lambeth Council, Mr. Enforcement Officer, with, of course, his body cam on, just in case I give him any abuse, which I wouldn't.
More people driving electric cars, and of course that means fewer people filling their tanks up with petrol. And petrol, the levies on petrol, as your viewers will know, because they're the ones paying it. It's so expensive. That money's going into government. When government loses that money because more people are driving EVs, we do need to think about what the alternative measure.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, thank you to everyone who's been in touch. We've got calls coming in the next hour on Prince Andrew, on rape gangs, on migrants, on net zero, on Soldier F as well. Soldier F is a very, very big issue, and Matthew made his points very, very well just before the break. We'll return to all those issues in just a second, but firstly, now it is time for the sport.
Sports news from The Sun.
Dean Scoggins is with us, the Deputy Head of Sport for The Sun. Great to... Oh, no, it's not. You're not Dean Scoggins. You're Mike Anstead.
Dean's much better looking for me. You should know that, but no. Mike Anstead. I think me and Dean had a late substitution, so...
late substitution,
yeah. So
right.
the Prem board with the wrong number was put up.
You see, what's happened is I've relied on an old piece of paper. Sorry, I do apologise.
We just want to keep you on your toes, Peter. That's all it is. Yeah,
that's it. Well, you're putting, you always... in the
I'll take it as a compliment.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. I mean, he's a good-looking lad. You're a good-looking lad. I'm a good-looking lad. We're all... it's easy to confuse us.
Absolutely.
Easy to confuse us. Right then, let's talk about Manchester United losing their captain, Virgil van Dijk, if that is his name, maybe it's Mike Anstead, I don't know, has revealed he called the players' meeting following the defeat to Manchester United at the weekend. Tell us more about what was discussed, the mood in the camp as well, Mike.
Yeah, so Liverpool, this is their 4th defeat in 4. Van Dijk felt strong enough that actually the next day, let's have a clear the air meeting with the players, not Arne Slot, it must be said. He said he came out of it feeling super happy, and it had the perfect response. They went and battered Frankfurt 5-1 last night. So Van Dijk, look, he signed a new contract end of the season, leader of the pack there. He said something that's clearly worked pretty well.
What can fans expect from Man City's talisman Erling Haaland? He's got a new YouTube channel as well.
Yeah, exactly. Launched this today. I think it's quite good fun. A bit of insight into players' lives off the pitch. But what we learnt today is, unsurprisingly, Erling Haaland loves a steak. But
yes.
A really big steak, a tomahawk steak, ribeye steak, all the big ones. He sources this from a little place called Green Oaks Farm Shop in Cheshire. I'm sure they won't be against having a little plug. But
sure they won't.
He pops down there with his partner every week, gets a bit of raw milk, bit of honey as well, and that's why he's that superstar, super strong centre forward who's, he's on course to break a load of records again this season.
High stakes, secrets revealed. I like that. As kid.
We're close, yeah. We're working on our back page headline for tomorrow morning. There's a couple of options, but the word steaks might be...
will be in there.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Definitely. Now, Sean Dyche, let's talk about him. He's taking charge of Nottingham Forest for the first time tonight. Does he need a fast start to win over fans?
I think so. Look, I mean, Sean Dyche is... not many people know this, but he actually started his career at Nottingham Forest, so he didn't play a single game under Brian Clough, who let him go. But he knows all about the club. We know he goes to these meetings down the pub and the coffee shop with the Forest old boys. So he's really bought into that last couple of days with the interviews and press conferences he's done. Tonight's the big test. They're at home to Porto, pretty big European team coming to town. First match, the best way to do it is get a win and get those fans back on side. Look, they're on the 3rd manager of the season. Fans are a bit worried about, are they going to go down? Is it all falling apart after having great success last season? No better way than start with a win tonight. So he's saying all the right things so far.
Well, we'll see what happens. Certainly, thank you very much indeed. That is indeed Mike Anstead, who is the head of content of The Sun. Apologies.
I think Dean's back tomorrow for anyone missing him.
I just read what's on the page in front of me. I'm Ron Burgundy. So thank you very much for that, Mike. Much appreciated, and apologies for the error there. They do happen in a show that is 3 hours of live radio. Let's just remind ourselves about one of the big issues you want to talk about today. This is the rape gangs inquiry. Earlier today, the leader of the opposition, Kemi Badenoch, spoke about the slow progress of the inquiry, and actually we've had a source from the government speaking to the Press Association as well, saying it could take months actually to get a new chairman or chairwoman for this inquiry. Let's see what Kemi Badenoch's been saying on this.
The fact that nothing has got going, and why is that happening? The Labour government needs to answer that. The safeguarding minister needs to resign. The victims have asked her to resign. I have said for many years that she is not good, for a long time, she's not good at this job. She is not a good safeguarding minister. We need somebody who is competent, who can make sure the inquiry gets going.
Well, we'll talk to Isabel Oakeshott about all of that in just a few minutes' time. There is an awful lot to talk about. The one-in, one-out migration issue as well. France backing down from the pledge to crack down on small boats. Figures are showing that over 60,000 migrants have entered the UK under Starmer. We'll also talk about Strictly. Yes, we will, because all the stars in line to replace Tess and Tess Daly and Claudia Winkleman on Strictly. There are lots and lots of people up for this job. It's a very much coveted job in showbiz, of course. I am not in the running, it must be said, although I'm sure you can think of nothing better than me in Sequins, probably very similar to, what's the guy who was on The Apprentice? What's his name? Tom Skinner. Yes, they probably look very similar to him, actually. Bosh! And we'll also talk to Will Barker in the next hour as well. He's Deputy Head of News at The Sun, about what's in the paper tomorrow. There's so many different issues to talk about. And thank you to Damon in Wigan, who's been in touch. He says, I was a firefighter for 32 years, and in those years we were on strike once. I felt guilty for it. However, to keep going on strike, like the doctors, over and over again, all you think of is how much more and more money we can get, and your focus becomes just on money and not patients' care. Now, I'm all for strikes when it is fair, but these strikes are not fair and should not go ahead, says Damon. Well, thank you for that, Damon in Wigan. I appreciate that. And I totally agree with what you're saying as well, actually. I think the junior doctors need to sit down, shut up, start treating some patients, stop whinging about money, having got a huge 30% rise. I mean, I don't know about you, but I have not got a 30% rise in my salary in the last year, and I would imagine that very, very few people watching and listening to this programme on Talk have as well. Let me know your perspective on all of this. We'll take a load more calls in the next hour as well. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call, and we'll talk to Isabel Oakeshott with her opinions in just a minute here on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good evening, this is Talk Drive. Thank you so much for your company. I'm Peter Cardwell, here right through until 7 o'clock. I'm back tomorrow as well, between 4 and 7, and at the weekend between 10 and 1, Saturday and Sunday, and then drive all next week as well. So we've lots of time to enjoy one another's company. Let me know your thoughts on all the issues we're talking about today. 0344 499 1000. We're talking about the rape gangs inquiry. We'll get Isabel Oakeshott's thoughts on that in a minute. The one in, one out migrant fiasco, the junior doctors strike as well. We'll find out what Isabel's view on that is. We'll talk about Strictly as well. Strictly Come Dancing, lots of people like that. I'm not a fan, I must say, but Tess Daly and Claudia Winkleman are going, so we'll find out who can replace them. Rod McPhee will talk to us about that. I have a few questions about the traitors as well, which I will put to Rod. We'll find out what's in the Sun as well, and we will take calls. We've got calls coming into this building about Prince Andrew, about rape gangs, about migrants, about net zero, and about Soldier F as well. This is a big trial. Soldier F has been found not guilty on 7 different counts, 2 of murder and 5 of attempted murder at Bloody Sunday 53 years ago in Northern Ireland. How should we prosecute people? Should we prosecute people at all for things that happened 5 decades ago in Northern Ireland, or indeed here in Great Britain as well? Let me know your thoughts on all of that. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me at 72222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV. Follow me at Peter Cardwell. Send me a voice note, less than a minute please. You can also send me a WhatsApp text message or give me a ring on the main number 0344 499 1000. Loads to discuss between now and 7 o'clock. Stay with us here on Talk Drive. Well, earlier today, the leader of the opposition, Kemi Badenoch, spoke about the slow progress of the rape gangs inquiry.
Fact that nothing has got going. And why is that happening? The Labour government needs to answer that. The safeguarding minister needs to resign. The victims have asked her to resign. I have said for many years that she is not good, for a long time, she's not good at this job. She is not a good safeguarding minister. We need somebody who is competent, who can make sure the inquiry gets going.
Kemi Badenoch, the leader of the opposition there. This was the view of Nigel Farage, the Reform UK leader. He spoke to Jeremy this morning about the rape gang scandal.
The rest of the world is looking on at this with total and utter incredulity. This must rank as one of the greatest moral stains on our country. Not just the fact that it happened, and probably is still happening, even though people like Mayor Khan in London deny it. It's the fact that nothing's been done about it. Yeah. It's the fact that the police, the social services, councillors, MPs who knew about this willfully did nothing. There are many, many, many Labour MPs in seats that have got big Pakistani, Kashmiri communities, and they can see what the so-called Gaza independents are doing. And if they fear, if they're seen to get tough on Muslim extremism, it'll cost them their seats. That's just how shameful this whole thing is.
I can see where Nigel Farage is coming from, certainly on Labour's fear of the Muslim vote, if such a thing exists. I don't think all Muslims vote the same way, in the same way as I don't think all members of any ethnic group vote the same way. But I don't think this is about Islamic extremism. I think this is about paedophilia, and those two can be linked, but I don't think they are necessarily linked. I think this is about people acting with impunity, people raping children. And that, of course, we know factually that was predominantly Pakistani Muslim men when it came to these rape gangs. But I don't think it's about their ideology. I think it's about their paedophilia. Yes, there are cultural issues that are part of that, but I think I respectfully disagree with Nigel Farage on certainly some elements of that. Jim Gamble was one of the people who was thought to be, was a front runner, was shortlisted to be the chairman of this inquiry. He's now pulled out, and Julia spoke to him earlier. Jim Gamble withdrew from heading up the inquiry. He discussed his belief that there's a need for a cross-party solution to ensure progress on this very, very difficult issue.
It took too long to get here, but we are here now. The Home Secretary and the Prime Minister have made clear in their statements that this is going to go forward. It's not going to be diluted. So I think echoing victims' voices is absolutely right, but echoing them and weaponising them from one political party against another is just not helpful, because none of them have covered themselves in glory.
True.
I genuinely think they need to get into a room together, all of the parties, say, look, the principle we agree on is there needs to be an inquiry. How can we collaborate and lead by example so that there is a cross-party approach to this? And I just found it, really concerning that victims and survivors were being caught in the crossfire of parliamentary debate in what I saw as an unhealthy and unhelpful way.
Okay.
Jim Gamble there. Now, he's the former head of CEOP, which is an organisation about exploitation. He's a former senior police officer in Northern Ireland and nationally as well. And he would have been, I think, a very good chairman of this. Others may disagree, and certainly the fact that he had he had a policing background, and that the other candidate had a social work background, were of concern to these victims, 5 of whom have now said that they believe that Jess Phillips, the safeguarding minister, should resign, and 4 of those 5 say they won't be helping the inquiry any longer if Jess Phillips remains the Home Office minister in charge of safeguarding. Isabel Oakeshott is Talk's international editor. Talk's international editor, as I say. Isabel, what do you make of this?
It's such an unholy mess, isn't it? And it just makes me feel how terrible we are at these inquiries. Why is it that we can never seem to get public inquiries right? Why is it that our public inquiries are so protracted and so tortured and so agonized that even if you're someone like you and me, Peter, that follow all this stuff, that are really energized by it, that love the ins and outs of who did what when, and primarily who is responsible and who could have done better, lose the will to live, because this stuff takes so long. I think that the quest to do everything perfectly, to get the perfect public inquiry, far too often comes ahead of the most important thing, which is to establish a number of simple, clear lessons that everybody can understand and engage with in a timely fashion. And, I'm not obviously involved directly in this. I'm not connected to any of the victims, and they will have their own perspective on how this should be done. But I just fear another years and years and years and years. We need the lessons now. It's like the COVID inquiry. I can't believe it came back up again this week. That is my special subject. I tried to listen to it and I just thought, oh my God, this is ancient history, and although the difference here is that unfortunately this predatory behavior, this abuse is not ancient history. It's happening now. As a result, we need to know quickly what went wrong and know quickly how do we go about stopping it. And this just goes on, doesn't it?
It certainly does, Isabel, and you're absolutely right in your analysis there. And it does worry me that, for example, the previous inquiry, a much wider inquiry by Alexis Jay, 20 different recommendations, that sat on a shelf in the Home Office for 18 months under the Conservatives. It sat on a shelf for 6 months under Labour before they started doing anything about it. Alexis Jay saying only 2 of her 20 recommendations have actually been acted upon. I just wonder, with these inquiries, whether you think if they are a statutory inquiry, should there then be a duty or should it be mandated for governments to say, right, if you're going to have the inquiry and there are going to be recommendations by the person who independently comes up with them, should you then have to implement them? What do you think of that idea? It's something that Julia feels strongly about. I talked to her previously about that. I think it's not a bad idea, but I just wonder what your perspective was, Isabel.
Yeah, obviously it makes a nonsense of the whole thing if after a very tortured process that costs millions of pounds, sometimes hundreds of millions of pounds, literally, in the case of the COVID inquiry, God knows how much it's going to cost, if there's no obligation to implement at least a significant proportion of the recommendations, then what was it all about? Who's really going to sit there and read millions of words of testimony? That said, whoever presides over these inquiries are not government experts usually. They can make a set of recommendations under one administration. The whole thing takes such a goddamn long time that by the time the recommendations are made, it's a whole different administration. I don't think you can have a public inquiry that literally by law obligates the government of the day to apply changes which may have been dreamt up by the previous administration and their mistakes. But there could be something in the spirit of it, much as there is with parliamentary select committee inquiries where, the government has an obligation to respond in a proper manner to what select committee reports say. And there's a sort of spirit of it that, yes, we're going to take what you say very seriously and try to implement, a good deal of it unless we've got very good reasons not to.
I wonder if I can ask you about this report that France is apparently backing away from a pledge to crack down on small boats. This is as 60,000 migrants have entered the UK under Starmer. I mean, this presupposes that France actually was serious at one point about dealing with about migrants going across the Channel. Clearly Macron is under pressure. His hard line, some would say, Interior Minister is gone, and there's been so much turmoil in the French with the French government. They've had a number of prime ministers. Do you believe the French were ever serious about this? Because they're saying they've taken the foot off the gas. Was the foot ever actually on the gas?
No.
Okay, thanks.
Look, this is so serious on the part of the absolute systematic failings of the French authorities that I said earlier today, and I will repeat it. It is time to stop all payments to the French. They are not our friends in this matter. You know, every time these migrant launches go out and set off, as they do on an almost daily basis, there is a French corvette in the Channel, a French warship that just sits there and watches it all happening and waits for them to get to the halfway line, whereupon it's our problem. The French are very, very happy for these migrants to come our way, and they are doing nothing but tokenism on this matter. And so why do we continue to push our hard-earned cash over to France in the hope that things are going to change? They're not. They're going to keep on sending the migrants our way until we get really serious about how we deal with the French.
I wonder as well, Isabel, if I could ask you about the junior doctors. They've announced a 5-day strike over renewed pay demands. This is despite the 30% rise that they've got. I don't know about you, I just despair. I just think, read the room, guys. Seriously. I understand there are issues about, as was pointed out to me earlier, about job security, and there are problems in the system. But in terms of pay, they're paid enough.
Yeah, I mean, didoms about the job security. Who in the modern world, apart from, you know, trade union workers, actually has any job security? You know,
good point, well made.
Actually, if you're a qualified doctor, you don't need job security from the NHS. Guys, you can get a job anywhere in the world. Here's the reality. There's a global competition for healthcare professionals. So, one, we have to pay them decently, but two, can they just stop bleating? Either they want to work in the NHS or they don't. And if they don't want to work in the NHS, if the deal isn't good enough for them, hello, there are plenty of private sector NHS jobs available.
Or abroad. Or abroad, they say.
Patients.
You're absolutely right as well. They say, oh, we might go to Australia. Fine, go. You know, off you go. That's fine. We'll deal with it in another way. It really, I think it's quite sickening, actually, especially because we know during those strikes, lives were lost.
Of course lives are lost, and those figures, I don't know whether we actually ever really get the true figures. They don't even touch on the actual scale of the suffering to patients because of these strikes, because it's the little things. It's the people who were supposed to have an operation on a given day and weren't given any food or water all that day because they have promised and promised and promised an operation, you know, before 7 o'clock at night, and then it just doesn't happen, and they've starved all day for nothing. That is actually existential if you're very frail and you're in your 80s. You know, I've seen it happen. It happened to my mum, actually. You know, she was frankly dying and was starved waiting for an operation that never happened. You know, these are the untold stories, and I'm sorry about the NHS doctors, but you know, the training that they get at public expense is very, very substantial, and they do owe something back, you know.
Well, on a cost, you know, £250,000, and whether they should have to pay that back or at least work in the NHS for 10 years, I think is a debate worth having. Isabel, thanks for your contribution. I'm sorry to hear that about your mother as well. It's a very sad story. Thanks for your contribution this evening. That's Isabel Oakeshott, who is Talk's international editor. Thanks also to Barry, who's been in touch. He said, I did 4 tours in Northern Ireland. I worked all over the country, sometimes on covert operations. I found Londonderry really sinister. I was never comfortable working there. I visited a few years ago and was immediately wary. I didn't linger. Barry, it's a much better place now, I must say, and I think, you know, Londonderry, Derry, whatever you want to call it, is a pretty vibrant place, and I just hope we can hopefully put so many of the troubles we have behind. But how we should do that, how we should deal with truth and justice, that's a big, big issue, not just in Northern Ireland, but also because of all the terrorism that was perpetrated in GB as well, Great Britain. I want to talk about that before 7, and we will take some more calls on it. But in the meantime, Billy has been in touch from Worcester on the rape gangs inquiry. Billy, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Hi. If you got a couple of minutes.
I do. Go ahead.
I think, to be honest, right, everybody, the government, the public, has got it all wrong. There's been literally this grooming gang with the Pakistani men and stuff has been going on for a really long time, right? I'm originally from the West Midlands, right? I can't say where I'm from because I'm well known.
Okay.
Right? I remember being at school. I'm 58 years of age, right? I remember being at school, and the Pakistan guys were then doing things to girls, right? And so we're looking back at nearly 40 years ago.
Yeah.
Right, and it was going on then. I was too young. I didn't realise what was happening. But as I grew up a little bit more, went to college, and then we found out there was girls being abducted, right, from their houses and stuff, right. And you know, I'm a Sikh at the end of the day, right, and we're a strong community, and we believe in what's right and what's wrong, right. And there was a lot of this stuff going on, but I didn't actually connect at that time what was happening.
Yeah.
Right. At that age, right, there was some stuff going on in this country where we had the NFL, National Football League, right. So there was a lot of racism going on. Right, so the Indian guys and the black guys stuck together. We was fighting the white guys, to be honest, the skinheads and stuff, and all this stuff is going on. Right, so this is like
it's gone on for
a long time.
And
right,
can we stop it happening, Billy? Is my question. Can an inquiry help? Because
no,
so much.
Won't.
You don't think so?
No, it won't, because you've got the wrong people. Right. So anyway, like I said, there's a lot of stuff happening.
So why have they got the wrong people, do you think?
Because you've got the police involved, the social workers, who actually helped, in a horrible way, help them do this.
But would an inquiry, would an inquiry, Billy, not actually lift the lid on that and actually say, okay, if there's, where there's criminality, where there are crimes, prosecute those crimes, throw the book at those people by all means. But the inquiry looking at the wider issue, would that not be a good idea?
If you had the right people, you see, let me tell you something now, right? As I grew up, like I was trying to say, right? We helped, see girls, and we set up a league, right? As young kids, right? And I can't say what.
That's okay. No, say what you want to say and don't say what you don't want to say. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, so it was like anti-something league.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Where
so you're saying you're from a Sikh background and you were protecting Sikh girls? Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. So I saw this. Like I said, I'm 58 years of age. I saw this happening when I was like 15, 16.
Yeah.
Right. But I didn't quite understand.
Yeah.
What was going on. But it was happening then, right? As I've grown older now, anyway, so we had loads of fights and stuff and whatever. I'm not trying to paint myself in a good light in any way.
No, I know, Billy, but there are people like you. There are people like you, Billy, who stood up for people at the time and want to see the truth emerge. I certainly do as well. Billy, thanks for your call. I appreciate it. We're going to talk more about that certainly between now and 7 o'clock. And if you want to talk about it, give me a shout like Billy did. 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
more people driving electric cars. And of course, that means fewer people filling their tanks up with petrol. And petrol, levies on petrol, as your viewers will know, because they're the ones paying it. It's so expensive. That money's going into government. When government loses that money because more people are driving EVs, we do need to think about what the alternative measure looks like. What we want to get to through this cheaper energy commitment is that you make electricity so cheap that your viewers are saying, get me an electric car as quickly as possible.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Now, if you're a fan of Strictly Come Dancing, like a bit of sequins and a few cha-cha-chas on a Saturday night, well, Tess Daly and Claudia Winkleman have announced they are leaving the show. Both of them are going. Speculation rife over who will replace them. Never say replacement, always say successor, I find. Rod McPhee is the TV editor of The Sun. Rod, thanks for joining us in the studio. How are you doing?
Great, thank you. Great.
Has this been coming for a while?
In TV circles, I think people have been saying it's a matter of when, not if. But now that it's happened, it's still quite a big shock. I don't think anyone, if you'd have said to them last night, do you think this is going to happen, they would have said any time in the near future. But it just dropped this morning. You know, they put out the announcement, and then for the last 8 hours or so, everybody's been going wild with rumours and speculation. But what I think it boils down to is Strictly has had a bit of a whiff of scandal around it in recent years, but also I think that Claudia, has a huge hit on her hands with the Traitors. So that's her solo gig. Why would she sort of share the limelight with Tess?
Because Strictly is a huge programme, but Traitors is a bigger programme.
Well, now it is. Only in the last couple of weeks it's overtaken Strictly in the ratings. But I mean, even if it hadn't have overtaken it, it would have been a very close second anyway. And like I say, it's a solo gig for Claudia. And I don't think there's a whiff of any bad feeling between her and Tess. I don't think it's a question. I don't think I think she enjoyed sharing the limelight with Tess. But, you know, if you've got your own spotlight, you step into it.
Yeah, certainly. Although the question I always have with Claudia Winkleman is, what's she hiding beneath that fringe? Is there a scar? Is she like a sort of Harry Potter character? No.
Oh, I mean, there's all sorts of theories about why she has that. I mean,
what are the theories? What are the fringe theories?
Well, actually, no. Look, I think what it actually boils down to is this: if someone walked in here in a black wig with a fringe on it, you'd go, Claudia Winkleman.
Yeah.
She's created her own look. It is, yeah, the eyeshadow. And what's interesting, we've been looking at pictures of her from like 15 years ago when she joined the show. She never used to have that look. She's nurtured that look, and she knows that you instantly go eyeliner, black fringe, Claudia Winkleman.
Yeah. Often when people think of custard creams, they think of me, for example. So who's going to replace them, do you think? What is the smart money on?
Well, they think that it's going to be two women, because the BBC are very proud of the fact they've got two women hosting their biggest show on a Saturday night. To do anything other than put two more women in their place would be seen as regressive in the same way as putting them in there was seen as progressive. So I think it's just a question of who. Some theories are that you'll have contestants like Alison Hammond and AJ Adudu going in there. Other people say it might be more seasoned hosts like, say, an Emma Willis. People like that. But I think it'll definitely be two women. But, you know, famous last words. No, my luck, they'll decide to shake it up next year. But
speaking of Claudia, I mean, you're watching The Traitors, I'm sure. It is brilliant television. Where does it go next, do you think? Because in America they've had celebrities on it really all the time, all those different series. But this is the first celebrity one, and you've had such a high quality, I mean, real proper celebrities here. We're not talking about some of the people who've been in reality TV previously. You're talking about, you know, Stephen Fry, Alan Carr, Celia Emery. I mean, real household names here. I mean, is it the best series yet, do you think, of The Traitors? I've been watching it.
Well, it's hard to say because this is the first series of the Celebrity Traitors, but and people are saying, I mean, some people are saying it's better than the non-celebrity traitors. I mean, I think that will divide opinion. I think a lot of people like.
I think the non-celebrity one is better.
Well, my argument is that when you watch the non-celebrity one, you are at zero with these people. You don't know these people. You don't know who they are, so you have to go from 0 to 50 before you can work out anything else.
But that's part of the fun.
Yeah, but also, why is Celebrity Traitors so good? And maybe it's that we're having to unpick all our preconceptions of these people. I mean, you've got people on there like Stephen Fry, who we view as being a bit of a genius. But is he a genius?
You might.
Well, there's lots of people on there that, you know, you think, oh, well, there's a great actress like Celia Imrie.
Yeah.
Who would have thought we'd have seen her passing wind on national TV?
You know, there's polling on that. YouGov
really?
did some polling on that. Yeah. Apparently, men thought it was funnier than women, actually. So the polling company did some polling on that. Yeah.
I mean, did we need a poll to know that men think that farting's
Probably
funny?
not.
No.
Probably not. But
No.
you know, I suppose it was very, very important. Yeah. So I mean, when it comes to Claudia Winkleman, clearly she's doing a great job on The Traitors. It is a great series, and bringing in, you know, it is one of the few things I will sit down at a particular time to watch live.
Yeah.
I wonder, just talking about some of these people who may be in line for Strictly. Holly Willoughby, Zoe Ball, people like that.
Yeah, they've all been mooted. I think it's difficult because I think what the BBC will also have to do is think about diversity. A favourite word on talkTV, but basically
favourite word of the BBC.
But basically, it's about saying, do we put in place 2 white 50-something women to replace these 2 white 50-something women? And I'm guessing the answer to that question might be no, that we need to think about making it look different, feel different, because I suppose if you, apart from anything else, if you try and replicate what you've already done, it might just look like a pale imitation of what's already gone. So
Quite literally.
Yeah, exactly. Well, but basically you've got to see, you've got to think about how you take it from the year 2026 onwards. So maybe there's a way that they can do that with the next 2 people.
Jane says, I'm glad these overpaid people are leaving that dance programme, more licence fee money saved. It may not be, of course. We don't know. Are these made by BBC Studios, so we don't actually know their fees and things?
So actually, I'm not sure if it's actually licence fee payers' money that pays them, but we don't know what they get. No, it's all top secret. I would bet my hat that it's a 6-figure sum.
Yes.
And I would bet my hat it's probably closer to a 7-figure sum. Certainly when all of their various endorsements and everything taken into consideration, I don't think they'll be scratching around for 50p for the electricity meter after
Certainly not. Rod, we will follow that with interest. Thank you very much indeed. That's Rod McPhee there, who is the TV editor of The Sun, and we're going to find out more about the paper and what's in it tomorrow. There are so many different stories around, not least King Charles feeling thrilled that he shook hands with the Pope and prayed together in that historic first. We'll also talk about a headline. I'll just read you the headline now. I'll tell you nothing more until we speak to Will Barker. Chopper on a chopper. Stay with us.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thank you to Phil in Portsmouth, who says, "Hi Peter, how is it we can prosecute people for something that happened in 1972 where people lost their lives, but for someone who is calling for the death of innocent people, i.e. that muppet from Glastonbury, gets forgotten after about 6 months? The system is wrong," says Phil in Portsmouth. You're absolutely right, and the scumbag Pascal Robinson Foster should be arrested and charged for shouting death, death to the IDF. We got that statement from Avon and Somerset Police, who appear to be doing absolutely nothing. It's nearly 4 months on from that. They're running the clock down. We can see exactly what they're doing. It is absolutely straightforward. He should be arrested, he should be questioned, he should be charged, and he has not been done. That has not happened for his clear anti-Semitism. It is disgraceful, and you're absolutely right to bring that up, Phil. Right then, let's talk about The Sun and what is in the paper tomorrow. Will Barker is with us, the Deputy Head of News from the paper. How are you doing?
Very good, thank you.
Tell us about the King, because we've talked a little bit on the programme, but you have more detail about the King saying he felt thrilled as he shook hands with the Pope, and then they prayed together.
Yeah, well, he's had obviously a difficult week with all the stuff going on with Andrew, put it all behind him and headed off to Vatican City, met the Pope in this sort of historic first, and prayed with him, yeah, it's all very nice, and Pope got to meet our Arthur Edwards as well, our snapper.
Oh, that's good. Arthur has done this for such a long time, exactly. And I'm sure that was a wonderful thing for him. Strictly, of course, big story that you'll be talking about in the paper tomorrow, I'm sure.
As it stands, it's the splash. I think Rod's probably just been telling you all about it, but there was lots of consternation in the morning. It came completely out of the blue. Nobody was warned about it, which is really weird in this sort of day and age. We tend to sort of get like a bit of a clue that something's happening, but it all caught us cold. But I think the line that what our guys are kind of hearing, that it's sort of been looked at, that they've been thinking about it for a while and kept it a very tight kept secret, and it's sort of, all our guys are kind of looking at the fact that why have they done this now? It's sort of drawing lines between the fact that Claudia's on Traitors, which is now doing obviously very well. Yeah. Tess maybe wants to move on, whereas Strictly is sort of plummeting a bit and has sort of had its fair share of problems.
Well, the time for talk is over on the Traitors. Let's speak to you about migration. France is rowing back on a key promise to smash the small boats crisis. This is just a betrayal, really, isn't it?
Yes. Well, the figures are sort of came out yesterday that we've now already hit the 2024 amounts. I think the Tories have been doing some working out some stats, and they reckon under Labour there's an amount of people at the size of Scarborough have come over. It's about 60,000, and it appears that the French are rowing back on their plans. I think they were going to tackle them more. They were going to start slashing the boats and all that kind of stuff. But we watched some guys go out yesterday, and they were literally just waved through by the French.
Tell us about the headline. All I've told our viewers and listeners is the headline, "Chopper on a Chopper." Take it away.
Well, I had to get clearance on this one. I wasn't sure whether I'd be allowed to say it, but
you are allowed to say it. Yes.
There was a centenary anniversary.
Compliance Claire has been
exactly. That's what I had to get. Complete compliance.
Has been asked. Yes. As she once famously said to me, Peter, I keep a very close eye on the penis situation. So she has been consulted. Go ahead.
So there was a party, black tie party at RAF Benson, and in this hangar there was a very expensive £100 million heavy lift Chinook, and there were lots of black tie wearing people wandering around. Clearly somebody had put too much champagne down their necks, and after the event somebody found that they'd drawn a willy on the side of the Chinook in some permanent ink, I think, which caused all sorts of problems. And
I think the CCTV footage is going to be reviewed there.
Exactly,
could be quite
there was a clean-up operation, there was an investigation, and it became known as the Chopper on the Chopper incident.
It takes a lot of balls to do that. Listen, thank you very much for your preview of what's in the paper tomorrow. You can pick up the paper, of course, in your local newsagent, or you can have a look online at thesun.co.uk. That's Will Barker there, Deputy Head of News at The Sun. I'll let you scurry back to the news desk. I know there's a lot happening. We'll take many more of your calls, texts, tweets and voice notes between now and 7 o'clock. If you want to get your voice on the air, 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Stay with us here on Talk.
More people driving electric cars, and of course that means fewer people filling their tanks up with petrol. And petrol, the levies on petrol, as your viewers will know because they're the ones paying it, it's so expensive. That money's going into government. When government loses that money because more people are driving EVs, we do need to think about what the alternative measure looks like. What we want to get to through this cheaper energy commitment is that you make electricity so cheap that your viewers are saying, get me an electric car as quickly as possible.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thanks to everybody who has been in touch, including on Twitter. I've been looking through some of the tweets that people have sent in. Elaine has sent me a message to say something no one has mentioned about the survivors who are backing Jess Phillips to stay on. They're not grooming gang victims, but they've been abused by family members or groomed by individuals who have a prior relationship with her. Call me a cynic, but to me this proves that they are using those victims as an excuse to widen the scope from day one. I don't know the facts around that, Elaine, but thank you for that anyway. And Elaine also says, I think this is a terrible thing to use people in this way and then blame them for not having to focus on the Pakistani element when Baroness Casey could not have been clearer. How long until we were only left with the survivors who were not victims of grooming gangs, and then they can avoid the situation altogether, is a very interesting point. Another person said they did hold inquiries. It was the outcome of local inquiries and subsequent events that led to calls for a national one. Good luck with making this a Tory scandal. The rape gangs occurred mostly in Labour councils on Labour's multicultural watch I hope this finishes them. Another person, Robbie, says Billy, the guy we spoke to a little bit earlier on, who told us he's from a Sikh background. Billy is exactly the type of voice that should be heard in any inquiry, says Robbie. Another person says of Jess Phillips, says on Twitter, her big problem is that her majority is less than 1,000 in a constituency that has a large Muslim population. This leaves her horribly compromised. Well, on those rape gangs, on the inquiry, in regard to that, Liam has given me a call from Bedfordshire. Liam, thanks for the call. Thanks for giving me a ring on 0344 499 1000. What would you like to say this evening?
Yeah, thanks, Peter. So, look, my point is around how do you find a chair for this? Because kind of no one wants to really touch it.
Yeah.
So should it come back to? I think fundamentally behind this, it's kind of culture and religion. Dare I suggest? Or should it be a joint chair and maybe having?
Liam, can you do me a favour? I think you might be on loudspeaker on your phone. Can you just take that off, because we're just struggling to hear you. Are you?
Is that better?
Go ahead.
Yes, is that better?
Much better. Go ahead.
Yeah. So what I'm suggesting is maybe maybe having a joint chair of multi-religion leaders that chair this across the Judaism, Sikh, Hindus, Christians, etc., but have a panel of chairs that look at the evidence and actually call out where it's gone wrong, because I think the only way you're going to change this is changing cultural behaviour.
Do you think an inquiry can work? Liam, you still there? No, we've lost him. Sorry, we did struggle with the line there, but I think Liam made his point well in terms of saying his view that there should be, sorry if you're struggling to hear what he was saying there, but talking about having a kind of multi-chaired panel, lots of different people. But I suppose that the question is, how do you attract those people? How do you make sure you have the right people as well? We'll continue to talk about this. If you want to get your call in between now and 7 o'clock, give me a ring, 0344 499 1000. I want to talk about Prince Andrew now with Jean, who's given me a ring from Felixstowe. Jean, what is your thought in regard to Prince Andrew? He's living in Royal Lodge there with Sarah Ferguson, his ex-wife.
Yeah. I feel that Andrew should be evicted from the Royal Lodge, and that also applies to his awful hanger-on ex-wife, Sarah Ferguson. They're both after all they can get without paying anything. And I'm sure that Prince William and his family, especially when they move to their new house, will not relish the thought of Andrew living just a half a mile away from them in Windsor. And I feel that Andrew has no right to be called a prince, and that should be taken away from him as well.
Where should the Yorks go? What should they do? Sarah and Andrew, what should they do?
I don't really care what they do, really, but I'd like to really send them away somewhere, to the Cayman Islands or something, or somewhere, well away from us, because I feel they're, it's a terrible pair. I've got no time for them at all. I mean, they Sarah Ferguson, she's got no right to be there at all. And I just feel that they should go away, and they deserve to have the house that they've got and the life they've got.
The thing I feel more strongly about than where they live, I must say, Jean, is the fact that Andrew knows things. He knows things about Jeffrey Epstein. He should be talking to the authorities in America. He should be talking to all the different inquiries that are taking place with Congress in America, American representatives looking into this. And he hasn't so far done that. He said, oh, I've made myself available and so on. Well, he hasn't actually done it. That, to me, is the most important thing, because we've got to get truth and justice for those victims of Jeffrey Epstein and the men that he protected as well.
Yes, I can see your point of view there. Yes.
And from your perspective as well, with Sarah and with Andrew, do you think you should just move out of Royal Lodge immediately, do you?
I think so, yes. Yes, I do. They should get somewhere, if they want to stay together, they should get somewhere smaller to live. I don't think she'd stay with him, actually, if they get kicked out of the
She's been pretty loyal for a number of years. It is quite strange to live in a house with your ex, I suppose, isn't it? Especially when you're divorced from them. But I suppose the less you question these things, the more they make sense. Jean, thank you. That's Jean in Felixstowe there. Net zero, big issue that we've been talking about today. This huge change that so many people are saying. We're being told by lots and lots of different people right across the globe that we should go towards net zero. The huge change that is needed in our economy and how we live our lives. Stephen's in East Yorkshire and has given me a ring about this. What's your perspective on all of this, Stephen?
I think it's a bit of an elaborate con. I'm not saying we shouldn't have renewables, which fulfill a part of your stable energy base, but a large percentage of it is just not viable. You're importing solar panels from China and wind turbine blades from China, what have been built with fossil fuels, shipping them halfway across the world, and you're bringing them here.
And Tony Blair agrees with you, Stephen. He says that when we're moving towards this too quickly, he's saying that, you know, we're sacrificing economic progress and all of this. And of course, we are 1% of the world's emissions. And if you have America, China, you know, India, that's not moving as fast as we're meant to relative to the size of our country, well, why should we bother, I suppose, Stephen?
Well, absolutely. I mean, and nobody's actually could give me an answer when I've asked questions. I said, if we actually met net zero, what do we achieve? Because as you rightly put, our emissions are so infinitesimally small compared to the rest of the developed world. We basically achieve nothing.
Well, I think the answer to your question is absolutely right. I don't think it makes a blind button of difference whether we get to net zero by 2030 or 2035 or 2050 or whenever it is. It matters if these huge companies change their technologies. And if you look at China, for example, they are investing in net zero, but they're investing in fossil fuels as well. They'll do whatever needs to be done to advance economically.
A massive rate. The Chinese, the amount of coal they burn, and I know this from a friend of mine who worked in China. He helped build a plant for processing coal ore so that they could process it faster. And so he said, and it's just unbelievable the amount of coal they'll burn in comparison will dwarf when we had the central electricity generating board, which was predominantly powered by coal.
Yeah.
In the UK.
Well, Stephen, I think you make some really good points there. Thanks for the call from East Yorkshire. That's Stephen there's giving me a ring at 0344 499 1000. Let's speak to Matthew in Fife, who has some thoughts on net zero as well. Matthew, thanks for the call. How are you doing this evening?
I'm not too bad, thank you very much. Yourself?
Yeah, very well, very well. Tell me your thoughts.
To be fair, I've been that busy. I'm actually completely dumbstruck that you rang me back. I was doing dinner with oil.
Well, you're very, very welcome to be on there. I hope we didn't interrupt the dinner too much.
No, not at all, because everyone decided they want to go and do their little bits and pieces, which means I'm just left with... Anyway.
What are you making? What are you making?
I did fried chicken.
Oh, that sounds nice. That sounds very nice. Well, the problem is, if we are net zero, I mean, will you be allowed to use your cooker? That's my question.
Well, this is the thing. I'm sitting there burning gas. I'm making dinner, coming home for food, and I'm just like, oh, okay. Anyway, so
go ahead.
My point is, Tony Blair's but sticking his nose in, where in this case it is wanted.
Yes.
He's still sat there getting away with what he did. I'm an ex-soldier, so I'm a veteran. He's still getting away with trying to push his digital ID agenda and war crimes, because he has committed war crimes and he's still getting away with it. So, you know what I mean? Ed Miliband.
Yes.
I had a really valid point, but when I rang up a couple of hours ago, I've now completely lost the train of thought.
Shall I read you what you said at the time? So this is quite amusing because Judy writes it down, and it might Judy is our assistant producer, and she says you apparently said if you look at how politicians handled Brexit and look at it now, they've wanted everything to fail. Does that jog your memory in any way, Matthew?
Absolutely. So
Good.
The politicians never wanted Brexit to work because they were clearly getting benefits and stuff from being a part of Europe. So when the British people turned around and said, not all of them, I get you that, but when the majority that voted turned around and said, we want to leave, what they should have done is elected members of parliament to serve the people, is rather than carry out their own wishes, is carried out what the people wanted. Whether they, almost like the suicide assist bill, right? I don't care what my politicians' views are. People's views are, we want it. So regardless of their views, our views should have been put before them. They're not there to put their views.
But they kind of are, though. I mean, we elect them, and don't we sort of trust them by electing them? We don't have a referendum on every single issue, so we kind of delegate our thoughts to them, do we not?
But with big, huge, like the suicide bill or the elected termination of your own, or whatever you want to call it, it's a suicide bill, right? And things like that, they're really big issues. Now, I'm not comparing, like, if you want to argue the toss about what day your bins get taken out, that's trivial, bash on. But big things like Brexit, the assisted dying bill, things like that, that's things that you can't put, as a politician, you're not there to put your view. You're there to put your constituency's view and what the people want. So that's something where, because I live in Fife, I've lived here for 10, 11 years. Nobody's ever put anything through my door that says, do you want to come and sit down and have a chat about this assisted dying bill? Do you want to come and sit and have a chat? I've never had, come and join us, let's have a chat and a sit down. I've never had any of that.
But you can write your MP, I suppose. You know, you could write your MP.
I shouldn't have to. When it comes to a big issue, that's when MPs should have the intelligence to sit there and go, I want to come and see what you guys want.
Okay.
But they don't do that. They just put their view forward.
Well, I know exactly what you're saying, Matthew, but I do think a lot of MPs do listen to the constituents, and they have a lot of contact with constituents. Often constituents who've tried to contact them, but whether they're going to represent Matthew's views or not, or the majority view even, I think is another matter. Matthew, listen, thanks for your call. Good luck with the fried chicken. Hope it goes really well, and we will no doubt chat again soon. On the other side of the 7 o'clock news, Kevin O'Sullivan is here. He will be here between 7 and 10. How are you doing, Kevin?
Hello, Peter. How are you doing?
Yeah, very well. What are you talking about in the show?
Well, around about this time last week, we sort of cottoned on to a story that was developing to the west of London, this school called Cherry Lane Primary School, where the parents are getting increasingly concerned about the close proximity of a vast asylum seeker hotel next to this primary school, big primary school, 640 kids. Hundreds of migrants are sometimes milling outside the school gates. Now, this is becoming an issue, a burning issue, I think, around the country. More and more parents worried about migrants milling around from the local asylum seeker hotels, milling around schools. And it's also an issue of women's safety as well.
Girls' safety as well in the primary school,
So we spoke to many parents down there, and now there's a similar protest this weekend down in Southampton. And we're going to talk to a mother and a father who's going to express similar fears. Now, I think this is a growing story around the country. So we're going to talk about this asylum seeker close to a school, and amazingly, the local police, in Hampshire Police, have been issuing rape alarms to local women. This is out of control. This is ridiculous. So these. I'm not trying to point the finger at every single asylum seeker, but there are fears surrounding these hotels, and there's a reality. We found out another story, I think you did as well, about this Syrian asylum seeker who...
Why is he not in prison?
3 sexual assaults. Doesn't even get sent to jail. I mean, he walks free from court, but it proves that when parents and women worry about the dangers, the safety on the streets, with a view to the migrant crisis, they're not lying. There's a reality.
I think what he was convicted of were just straightforward assaults, but certainly he had attacked women previously.
He's a woman attacker. And the victims are furious.